Okay, so I think we're actually going. Fingies crossed, because, like, shit be slow, yo. YouTube's all over the place right now. I wonder if it's the time of year. Hi, Dapper.
Hi.
Hello. Welcome.
Hello. Well, thank you. It's nice to be here.
I guess welcome
Uh,
back. You've been here a couple of times.
that's true. I have,
You're not
yeah.
exactly new.
No, no. Although I'm on
No.
your other channel more frequently, actually, I think.
Yeah, because we moved all the educational stuff about, like, things that matter onto the other channel. I'm over here just being a goober.
Hey, you know what? Being a goober is fun.
Yeah, yeah. I see you're being a space marine right now.
Well, kind of. I'll be honest, this is pre-recorded.
Oh, giving away your
Yeah.
secrets.
Yeah. It was, look, this is the same background I had on the last one,
Yeah, it
and
is.
it's the same loop, so, it's fine.
I like it. I mean, I did give away a secret about your channel when I was on it yesterday on Debate Hub, so it seems
Wait,
only fair that you
what
can give out a secret.
what secret did you give out? I don't even
That
remember.
I didn't watch K-pop Demon Hunters before
Oh,
reviewing people
right,
reviewing
right. Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Because I'm an
Uh,
asshole.
it happens. It's alright. It's not that big a deal.
Nah, I'm not sorry, and I'd do it again.
I don't blame you.
If you can be that easily dismantled, I feel like it's your fault.
That's fair. So I think we should talk about what's up. And first, like, what are you doing? What you got there?
I'm doing an art. So we have a Warhammer game coming up on Top Hats Off at some point eventually that Dapper's been working on. And he's
Yeah.
got some NPCs that need some art that needs to exist. So I am currently creating the okay. I am currently creating the character line work
Yeah. For
basically.
what character?
Fabricator, Locum, Archmagos, Macrotex, Samuel, Caesarian of the Forge World, Aventurus. Churros.
That was almost correct.
I
And of
almost did
course,
it.
yeah. And of course, I am here to help with some. We're going to go over the Space Marine Legions, right? So I'm going to assume that you have seen the previous Lorehammer video that we did, or that you are at least familiar with the overall history of the setting, because I am not going to go back into all of it. I will also probably do some of the like IRL history behind some of these legions, because sometimes the IRL history is interesting on its own. So yeah, and my plan is to go in numerical order, starting with the first legion, the Dark Angels, ending with the 20th Legion, the Alpha Legion. So yeah, and if you have questions, ask them. And
Hell yeah.
obviously, you should super chat them at Chesh because she deserves it.
Well, I'll definitely see them if you super chat them. If you don't super
Yeah,
chat them, I cannot guarantee that I will see them. But that's also okay. I am currently making a grid.
nice. Grids are important, especially for reference art.
Yes.
So let's just talk about what the Space Marine Legion is first. So after the or as the Unification Wars are wrapping up, so the Emperor is finishing up conquering Terra as well as Luna to some degree. Um,
Mm-mm-mm.
it is becoming clear that the Thunder Warriors, who are his genetically enhanced power armored super soldiers from the most of the Unification Wars, were probably not going to be successfully able to go and conquer the galaxy, which is what the Emperor's next move was planning to be. And so he had been working on this project called the Astartes Project. And the goal was to make um, more psychologically and physically stable super soldiers who also ended up being less physically powerful and smaller. But given that they could be better controlled, they had better discipline, and that they didn't die after a couple decades from like multiple organ failure, that was seen as a pretty decent trade. So
Solid trade off,
this was
solid trade off.
exactly this was a spin-off of the Primarch project, in which the Emperor created 20 generals to that whose the plan was for them to be the ones in charge of his great crusade across the galaxy, right? So each legion is based on the genetic template of one of the Primarchs. So we're going to talk about the first legion soon. And so while all of the legions have a standard set of implanted organs, there are genetic markers from each Primarch that change the character of each legion. And so when someone becomes a Space Marine, they take on certain characteristics of that Primarch. They don't become like a carbon copy of everyone else in the Legion, but they do have certain characteristics, right? So like what's a really good one? So the Raven Guard, which is the 19th Legion. Everyone who becomes a member of the 19th Legion tends to get their skin becomes pale, their eyes just turn into black orbs, and they sometimes get the SADS.
So they're Shatter Guy.
Basically, yeah. And so there's also a thing where the Astartes project was finished after the scattering of the Primarchs. And so they did not have the full genetic template of each Primarch handy to help with this. And one of the things that meant is that some of the legions, especially the ones with the less stable gene seed, had problems with recruitment and survival of new recruits until they found their Primarchs, and also had problems with excess mutations in their gene lines until they found the Primarchs, which they could use basically as a reference template to stabilize the gene seed. So that's one of the reasons why it was important for the Emperor to go out and find the Primarchs after the scattering. So
Why it was worth his time.
Exactly. So we'll start with the first legion. So the first legion were at first just called the First. It's not clear if they what their livery was like before they found the Primarch, but their Primarch was Lion L. Johnson. And yes, I'm going to talk about the real world thing here. Most of these names were established back in the 80s when the comedic and satirical aspects of the franchise were way stronger than they are now.
Correct.
So, yeah. So yeah, this name is clearly just Lionel Johnson, but they've split up the first word and put Lion space EL apostrophe Johnson there. Yeah.
Wonderful.
So yeah, that's what's happening there. Yep. He's actually one of the only two loyalist Primarchs that are in 40k right now in the tabletop game. So if you want to play with a Primarch in a tabletop game, you've got him as one of your options for loyalist Marines. So he ends up on a planet called Caliban, which, yes, there's a lot of Shakespeare references that are going to be coming here. Or if you look into the history of the Dark Angels. And so Caliban is a world that has a lot of influence from the warp. And there's all these horrible chaos spawn warp creatures that are hunting, the people and the animals on the planet. And so there's this order of knights who go around trying to, slay these chaos monsters to keep civilization reasonably safe. It's never going to be completely safe, but
they're doing their best.
So, exactly. The Lion ends up, his capsule crashes on Caliban, and as he grows up, he's recognized as a very superhumanly strong, tall, and intelligent individual. And he joins this knightly order and eventually kind of becomes like the de facto head of the entire planet. And he's also one of the only people to be able to kill a Calibanite lion first, like single-handedly, which is one of the biggest of these predators. And so he basically gets these orders together, and they go on basically just a purge of the entire planet, trying to get rid of as many of these beasts as possible. And he's also one of the first Primarchs found. And so the Emperor encounters him, and basically it's like, hey, how would you like to do what you're doing here, but across the entire galaxy with these like 10,000 guys who were definitely made with your genetic material, so they're basically your kids now.
How would you like and your mini-me's to go wreck everything? I mean, that sounds like a pretty solid deal to me. I would enjoy that. I mean, that's kind of what I do already on the internet.
So basically the answer was more or less yes, and it established a pattern where the Emperor would come to the planet where his sons have been lost, and he would offer them command, but there would usually be a period in which that the Primarch was brought back to Terra or stayed with the Emperor for to learn about like Imperial culture, the Great Crusade, Imperial technology, what their role is supposed to be in this whole thing. And so
Yeah.
that's usually, like a few decades that they spend doing that, and then they're given actual command of their legion. The Dark Angels started out as one of the biggest legions, mostly just because they had a big head start. They were the first deployed. They had some of the reasonably stable gene seed and a reliable implantation process. They end up having a black and red armor color scheme, so it's mostly black, but they have red trim and also their legion symbol, which is a sword with wings. So it's a sword pointing tip down with wings coming from just below the hilt. That was in red. Um, and then they adopt a lot of the sort of knightly culture of Caliban. So they have knight wings and they have various medieval heraldry stuff. So the vibe is very much like sort of a medieval King Arthur's court sort of deal, right?
Oh, okay, yeah.
Personal heraldry, stuff like that. Yeah. Um, and so that is the Dark Angels. So during the Horus Heresy, a
I
contingent
remember that
of
one.
yeah, a contingent of Dark Angels that had been left behind to garrison Caliban end up going traitor, but not necessarily all of them going for chaos. And basically, the Lion hears that this is happening, so he rushes back to his homeworld and just opens fire. And
Athens in
so,
the chat said, "Is that blood or armor color?" Yes.
yeah. So yeah, the Lion opens fire on the Dark Angels on Caliban because he's been informed that they have become renegades. But also, a whole bunch of them are actually not renegades and just saw their Primarch just open fire on them. So they're just like, I guess we should fire back.
I
Um,
mean, that
and
seems like a
so
reasonable response if you were to ask me.
yeah, so this sets up a whole lot of stuff in the Dark Angels plot line. And basically, the planet gets exploded. The largest chunk of it gets turned into a floating space station called the Rock, which forms the headquarters of the Dark Angels chapter in the 41st millennium. Um, and the people who fired on the Lion, they scatter across the galaxy. Some of them do end up becoming Chaos Space Marines. Some of them just become renegades. Some of them end up just settling on planets and variously ruling them or protecting them or whatever. And in the 41st millennium, these guys are referred to as the Fallen. And they're the big secret of the Dark Angels chapter. They're the secret that they can't let anyone know about, that they actually had a big non loyal contingent because they want to make sure that everyone thinks they're the most loyalist boys.
Well,
Yeah. um, and
you
so
know.
there is some speculation, I think well founded, that this lore was written by a guy in the 80s in England who was in fact a closeted gay man. And so there's a lot of theories that like this whole secretive nature and like we can't let anyone know might have been him expressing what it was like to be closeted in the 80s in England.
Mm.
And
I
so
mean, that
yeah,
seems to
there's
track. Did anybody ever ask him?
I don't know for certain.
Oh, I mean, somebody must have. Somebody
Probably.
must have.
And of course, the other thing is, if that context helps you interpret it that way, even if he says that's not what he was doing, that doesn't mean you're wrong to interpret it that way,
That's
right?
just death of the author stuff.
Yeah. So, in their current
That's
situation, so
just a
after the
theory. A
yeah,
gay theory.
so after the heresy, they changed their armor color to a dark green, like a dark forest green, with white chapter markings, and they are what's called a codex compliant chapter. And what that means is they more or less follow the instructions and restrictions set out in called the Codex Astartes, which we'll talk about later when we get to the author. But they do vary in a few
all,
different
that,
ways.
all that makes me think of is Ultima. The Codex of Ultimate Wisdom? What's the Codex of Ultimate Wisdom? What do you mean, what is the Codex of Ultimate Wisdom? That is the thing we just spent the last game busting our ass.
Yeah. Um,
Oh,
so
yay.
they do have a few different weird exceptions. They usually call their companies, which are usually a group of 100 Space Marines, wings instead of companies. And they have two variant companies. One is the Raven Wing, which is mostly guys on land speeders and bikes, and they
Nice.
retain the old pre-heresy color scheme of black armor with red markings.
Okay.
Then we also have there is their first company also has a variant color scheme. They go with bone white and green chapter markings, like the same dark green that is the normal color for most of the Marines. The Dark Angels are also famously one of the best equipped chapters or
Hmm.
legions. During the Horus Heresy, they were entrusted with otherwise forbidden weapons from the Dark Age of technology, which they only, as far as we know, used once, and it was against an alien force called the Rangda. And we don't know a whole lot about that whole campaign because it's one of the areas of the pre-heresy that Games Workshop has under like lots of wraps. And it's
Right.
also possible that the fact that two of the legions that are on this list are going to be just big question marks. There's a lot of implication that at least one of them is a big question mark as a result of this conflict called the Rangdan Xenocides, which is actually a series of 3 conflicts, but whatever.
I am one thing that I do need to say that I think is absolutely hilarious is that one, I don't really know anything about Warhammer. I've been like adjacently around Warhammer stuff in general, but haven't actually like delved into it to myself. But the amount of people that follow my channel that as soon as you started talking about Warhammer, we're all like, "Oh my
the
fucking god!" I was like, "How did this? I'm surrounded by Space Marines."
the floodgates have opened.
The
Yeah,
floodgates have opened. Oh dear. Oh no. It was like it was always there. It was always poking through a little bit, but now everything's like I'm just big wave of.
yeah. So one big thing that whole Codex Astartes did was it said, okay, we can't have Space Marine legions anymore. We're gonna have Space Marine chapters. So hypothetically, your maximum number of full-fledged Space Marines is going to be about 1,000, and each one is going to have a separate chapter master, and that's going to be the highest level of organization in Space Marines, and they can cooperate with each other across chapters. But any two chapter masters have the same level of authority. There might be like, a first among equals in terms of like prestige or something. If you're the chapter master of the chapter that keeps the original legion's name and livery, but you don't actually have any extra authority as a result of that.
Right.
And so the group of chapters that are descended from the Dark Angels are called the Unforgiven. And that is because they are all doing that whole thing where they're looking for the fallen. Now, their Primarch, Lionel Johnson, was lost to them after the heresy for almost 10,000 years. Turns out, bro was just taking a nap.
Yo,
Literally,
I feel that.
yep. He was like, all right, that was a whole lot of shit. I'm taking it like an
Taking
8,000
a
year nap.
fucking
Bye.
nap, guys. Later.
Yeah, so he was just in his secret bedroom on the rock, the biggest revenant of Caliban.
To be
And then,
fair, I would.
he's right. So fairly
I
recently,
wish I was doing
he
that
woke up.
now.
He woke up and then started traveling across the galaxy via a power called forest walking, where basically he goes into this alternate realm that looks a lot like the old forest of Caliban, and
Oh.
he can sort of will his path to come into like where he's going. And so one of the things he
Oh,
did a
it's
lot was seek
sick.
out the fallen and find which ones were actually loyal and there was a big mistake, or which ones have tried to redeem themselves, which ones are still like loyal to humanity or whatnot. And when he finds chill ones that he likes, he brings them back into the fold as the Risen. And so that's the current big storyline with them. Also, if you are interested in Dawn of War 4, the story trailer recently has revealed that the Dark Angels and their Primarch, Lion L. Johnson, will be in that game.
Oh, fun.
So, yeah, that was a big reveal towards the end of the story trailer. It was a bunch of Dark Angels step out of like Thunderhawks and drop pods and whatnot, and then someone in the Lion's armor, which is just presumably him, steps out and picks up one of the main characters from the previous games. Ashley Loves Blahai for 199 says, "Are you going to get to Blahai Space Marines?" So kind of is the answer to that, because one of the problems is so that's a question about the Carcardon Astra or the Space Sharks, which are a
Yeah.
loyalist-ish mostly chapter. And one of the problems is we don't actually know for certain which legion they descend from. But I will tell you what I think are the most likely, which is going to be probably the 19th Legion, but also maybe the 8th Legion.
Well,
So
I
we'll
don't know
touch on
why they
them.
wouldn't want to make basically Street Sharks.
I mean, yeah.
Street Sharks was great. All
So
right, look at
next
my
up, though,
screen
is
for
the
a
second.
second before you
Oh,
go to the next one. Does this read
okay.
okay so far?
Yeah, I think I
Cool.
can translate that into 3D pretty well.
Okay.
And, you know, then also I'll probably put a little bit of my own spin on, shapes and details and whatnot.
Yeah, there's definitely like something going on with the egg here that I'm not totally happy about with it, like with his body shape where he's coming kind of forward, but he's not forward enough.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna work on this. It still needs some work. We're working on it. We're working on it. Go on.
So the second Legion is the second Legion of Space Marines. And then we go on to the third Legion.
Hey, and moving on.
Yep. So the third Legion were called before they found their Primarch, his Heralds. They became known as the Emperor's Children pretty fast after they found their Primarch. Their Primarch is Fulgrim, sometimes called the Phoenician. And Fulgrim ended up on a planet called Chemos or Chimos or whatever. It's Chemos. Who knows? And so that was a mining world that was resource depleted.
Stamos.
Yeah, something like that. And so Fulgrim arrives there, and his big thing is that he rearranges that society so that instead of just being like desperately searching for whatever resources and wealth acquisition and whatnot, he reminds them of the importance of things like art and beauty and things like that. And so he sort of reorients society towards one that is about like fine culture and the search for perfection in one's craft rather than just a mad rush for whatever remaining resources one can get their hands on.
Right.
The in the pre-heresy, their colors are purple and gold, and they also become the only legion before the heresy who are allowed to put the Imperial Aquila on their armor as just like their device on their chest plate, which is considered to be a pretty high honor. Um, and they become sort of the poster boys of the Space Marine legions, right? They are considered to be the best swordsmen, the for one thing, the most aesthetically pleasing, because it
The
turns
best
out that one of
boys.
yeah, it turns out one of Fulgrim's superpowers is just being super hot, and
Hey, listen, that's a thing.
yeah, so he's considered to be almost supernaturally beautiful, and
Oh, so
so
he's Satan.
yeah, well, that actually is kind of a thing that happens because during the heresy, Fulgrim is
Wow.
in fact one of the first. He's in like the first batch of Primarchs to turn against the Emperor, and he
The subtlety. I can't.
yeah, he and his legion end up worshiping Slanesh, which is the chaos
Mm-hmm.
god of pleasure and hedonism and experience, but also that search for perfection, which is what led them towards Slanesh, right? After the heresy, their gold trim usually turns to silver, and interestingly enough, their war cry stays for the emperor, but more as a mockery than as a sincere, statement of loyalty.
Demacia.
Yeah. So,
Oh no, they're hot.
yeah. So
Oh
basically,
no.
the the fall to Slanesh is orchestrated when the the Emperor's children are fighting this war against an alien species called the Lair, Laer, and when this is not really known to the Ultramarines at the time, but they are actually a Slanesh worshipping alien species. And so after he manages to, just xenocide the whole species, he walks into one of their like temples and takes as a trophy this blade. And it's called the Laren blade because it's like the only remnant of their culture left. But that blade is inhabited by a demon who
Oh, as you
slowly,
do.
yeah, who slowly works it on Fulgrim to become just a full-on Slanesh worshiper. Um,
And just
yeah,
to explain what I'm doing here right now is I'm drawing kind of what his face would look like if he was still sort of human. Which then like the mech is gonna go over top of, just so we have a better like reference point. That's what this is for. So for anybody who's wondering why there's so many human features on this thing that's not gonna have very many human features, it's literally just for like understanding what's happening underneath all of the masks and stuff, and all of
which
like
is
the
important.
damage. Yeah, if you want things to make sense.
Yeah. So, yeah, Fulgrim is one of the first to turn against the Emperor. Let's see what else is important. He does end up killing his best friend and brother, which is another Primarch we'll talk about. We'll talk about which one he kills later on. But that was one of the things that helped him ascend to become a demon prince. In his demon prince form, his legs have been replaced by a snake tail. He gained an extra set of arms, and he got big old fangs. And so yeah, and I think he got wings too. So now he's got wings, 4 arms, snake tail.
Fangs. He's
Yeah,
got a he's got a moe tooth.
yeah. The Legion itself is largely scattered at this point. They're not really a coherent single force anymore, which is true for most of the Traitor Legions. They still break off into various Slaanesh worshipping warbands. Sometimes they'll accept formerly loyal Marines who fall into Slaanesh. And while everyone likes to say that it's like the sex cult, Chaos God, and while there is some truth to that, the thing that got the Emperor's Children was really more that search for perfection and trying to be the perfect swordsman, the perfect musician, the perfect whatever. No tolerance for any flaws.
Something about hubris.
And that obsession, yeah, that obsession
Yeah.
is what ended up leading them to Slaanesh and not like the sexy times. Let's see.
The
Let's go to
prawn.
the Fourth Legion, Iron Warriors. So the Fourth Legion is actually one of the last legions to find their Primarch, but they are, and they have a before that they have a very long service history with the Great Crusade. And what ends up happening is that they end up getting sort of like the shit assignments because they don't have a Primarch who can advocate for them getting the better assignments. And so they end up being under the command of like non-Astartes generals, like Imperial Army generals or fleet admirals or something. And so they just get put on the shittiest details. But part of their gene seed is that they become very like stoic. They're just like, all right, well, I guess that's what we have to do. We're just going to do what we have to. And so
Yeah.
they also become one of the more reliable Space Marine legions. When you
Oh,
tell the
they're the
Iron Warriors, hey,
Canadians.
kinda, yeah. When you tell the Iron Warriors, hey, you need to conquer this planet in this amount of time, they just go do it. And there might be a lot of casualties, even among the Iron Warriors, and almost certainly among the non-Astartes military forces. So they become very unpopular with the non-Astartes because they tend to have pretty high casualty rates because they're just trying to get it done. And casualties on either their own legion or their allies, not part of their big concerns.
Casualties are
Um,
part of the calculation. It's like when you're playing a video game and you realize that health is a resource.
yeah, yep. So their Primarch Perturabo ends up on a planet called Olympia. And we don't have a whole lot of stories about what his life was like on Olympia, but we know that he was a big fan of things like efficiency and he had a brilliant mind for mechanical devices. And so he invented a lot of things to help the population of Olympia. So, being one of the last Primarchs found, when he's reunited with his legion, one of the first things he does is look through their history. And
Makes sense.
he decides, you know what? You should have been better. This is not good enough. So he decides to randomly assign 1 in 10. So he groups the entire legion into groups of 10. It has them all draw lots. And whoever loses, the others have to beat him to death with their bare hands.
Oh,
And this is the decimation of the Iron Warriors. And so this does a few things. One of the biggest things that it does is it sets up that the Iron Warriors fucking hate their own Primarch.
I mean that is kind of a shitty thing to do, to just show up and be like, "You're not good enough. Beat the shit out of each other."
Yeah. So yeah, the first thing he does is just randomly kill 1/10 of the Legion to say like, you guys need to do better in the future. And then he continues to uh, become the general of the Iron Warriors and just not care about things like casualties or whatever. He continues on and perhaps even accelerates that whole like, we're the ones who just get the job done, whatever it takes. And for that reason, he ends up being one of the traitors because he resents all the other Primarchs for getting the spotlight and all the praise from the Emperor, while he realizes that his legion is the one that is doing a disproportionate
It's
amount of both
night
the fighting
shift.
and the dying.
It's a fucking
Yeah,
night shift.
he's like, I set my guys go out into some shitty swamp death world and have like a 40% casualty rate and finally get this compliance done on some backwater planet. Meanwhile, the Primarch of the Ultramarines goes and takes even longer and conquers some nice civilized world with a lot of diplomacy and only has to mop up a few, recalcitrant guys. And he gets feasts and he gets put on posters and everyone's, in awe of him. And here I am, stuck in the shit in some backwater planet. That blows. So, as we already know from the Horus Heresy, Horus, who's another Primarch, is like, yo, I will give you the recognition you deserve if you follow me and help me
I
depose the
just,
Emperor.
oh my god, we're going to betray the Emperor because we wanted a golden sticker.
Yeah, basically.
I just want
And
some
so,
acknowledgement, Dad.
right? Yeah. Look, one of the big themes of the entire Horus Heresy is that everyone has daddy issues. The Astartes
Yeah.
have daddy issues. The Primarchs have daddy issues. Yeah. So it's a whole bunch of daddy issues all the way down. So,
Yeah.
yeah, he's like, yeah, sure, let's do that. So, towards the end of the heresy, during the siege of Terra, the Iron Warriors are basically hard carrying the siege, right?
Yes,
Like
they seem to be doing for
all
everything, yes.
that is their theme, yeah. So all the other legions that are at the
Oh
siege
man,
are
my
all
back
like,
hurts. I'm so
oh,
tired from carrying all you.
well, yeah. So the other legions are doing things like infiltrating into the walls of Terra to go have like duels with personal rivals and basically ignoring any kind of strategic goals that are out there. And like Perturaba realizes, like as this is going, that Horus himself is sitting up on his flagship, just giving speeches about how awesome he is and how great his Imperium is going to be, and how the Chaos Gods have given him all this power. Perturaba's like, God damn it, I'm doing it again. You know
It's,
what? Fuck it, everyone, we're out. And so he just pulls the entire legion out and is like, peace, we're out of here. And that's one
I
of the
low
reasons.
key really like that. Like, you know what? Fine. Fuck all y'all.
Exactly.
Screw you guys. I'm going home.
Yeah, so like that is one of the biggest reasons that the traders lose the siege of Terra, is because at one point Perturabo is just like, they're just treating me the same way. Fuck this, I'm out. I don't need this. None of us need this.
Fuck
We're just
you,
gonna go
fuck
be our
you,
own
fuck you,
legion.
fuck you, fuck you. I'm
Yeah.
out.
So he retreats to a giant fortress that he has established, and after the siege, one of his brothers, Rogel Dorn, who we'll get to, they have a rivalry that turned into
That's a
like a
name.
bitter hatred during the heresy. And so Perturabo is like, oh, I've built the greatest fortress in the history of the galaxy. You will never be able to reach. And so Rogel Dorn's just like, bet.
K-Bet, yeah.
Yeah. So he and his legion travel to this iron fortress, and they start besieging it. And like they lose so many guys. And you know what the secret to the fortress is?
What?
It's not guarding anything. It's literally just a trap for Rogel Dorn. It was
It's
a big
just
fuck
there
you.
to be a giant fucking middle
Yeah.
finger.
Yep. That's the secret. And finally, another Primarch has to come in and be like, Dorn, you're just killing off your own legion. You got to stop this.
You're an idiot.
Like
Doran, please.
we have to go. Yeah, I'm taking you with me. Let's go. And yeah, that's basically the only reason that the Imperial Fists still survive as a faction. It's because one of his brothers was like, "Bro, he's
So,
obviously baiting you.
you
Stop
got
it."
baited. You baited, dude. You gotta stop. So I am now at the point where I'm starting to add random tubes. So the
I like
tubes aren't
random
here to make
tubes.
any sense. So if you're like, oh hey, look, you put all this whole skull here to try to make it seem like it makes sense, I did, and now the tubes are here to not make any sense at all.
Yeah, don't worry about that.
Yeah, don't worry about that.
Um, so yeah, the Iron Warriors now live mostly in the Eye of Terror. They have a new homeworld called Medrengard. Uh, Perturabo became a demon prince after grabbing a bunch of loyalist gene seed and sacrificing it. It's a little bit weird because for the most part in the current lore, the Iron Warriors are really not big fans of chaos. They if they find themselves mutating as a result of chaos, like let's say one of their limbs starts mutating, they'll cut it off and just replace it with a bionic limb that is
They're just
not
like,
going to mutate
no,
like that.
we're not into this.
Then you wake up one day, you're like, oh, my hand has tentacles. Well, I guess now that hand is a robot hand.
I mean, to be
Chop it
fair,
off.
that's not a bad response. There are definitely worse
Yeah,
responses you could have to your hand suddenly being tentacles. There's also a lot of debauched responses you could have to that.
true. And so they don't actually follow any of the chaos gods in particular, but they are willing to interact with chaos entities for their own purposes. But they see that
Right.
as more like hiring mercenaries rather than like, they're worshiping the chaos gods or something. Now, in
Right.
earlier
They're like,
depictions of
these
the
guys
Iron
are
Warriors,
useful sometimes.
right. Now, if you read older books that involve Iron Warriors, like the Ultramarine series, you'll see a lot more of the idea that they're actually chaos worshipping Space Marines. So this depiction is a relatively more recent depiction, but it's been
Okay.
relatively consistent lately. So yeah, in older works, they are much more typical chaos worshippers. But as it stands right now, it seems like their vibe is more like we're chaos Space Marines in the sense of we'll trap demons inside of a tank to make that tank more effective, but we don't super care about the chaos gods. They're just
Right.
sometimes handy. Yeah. So their armor is basically a dull metallic iron color, usually with a brass color trim, and they like to put hazard stripes on things as an accent marking.
Okay.
So, yeah,
That,
they're.
that makes sense to
Oh,
me.
and we didn't. Yeah, their symbol is an iron, like a. It's called an iron skull, but it looks more like a helmet with like a grill on the mouth guard. And pre-heresy, it was mostly unadorned, but post-heresy, it's there's an 8-pointed star of chaos behind it. They did not
Oh.
really change their color scheme much at all, actually, as far as I can tell, between the heresy and before. Um, so they basically looked exactly the same. In fact, if you were making a 40k army and you just took your like 30k Iron Warriors and were like, well, now they're Chaos Space Marines because I said so, I don't think too many people would object to that.
I'm making the
Even though
brain a
Games
little bit
Workshop,
smaller
that seems fair.
just to make it work a little bit better. Then we can play with the egg shape a little bit more.
Okay.
Sorry, go on.
Even though generally Games Workshop does not like you being able to buy an army and then use it in more than one of their games. They're trying.
That's
They try to minimize that. They're dicks.
obnoxious.
It is. It is very obnoxious. Yeah. So let's see. White Scars. So the White Scars were called the Star Hunters before their Primarch was found. Their Primarch is Jagatai Khan, and you'll never guess what cultural influence is their predominant cultural influence.
The Wrath of Khan.
No.
Oh man.
Mongolians.
What?
Yeah, so their theme is very heavily Mongolians, but also often
Never would have guessed.
the Mongol dynasty of China. So there's a lot of Chinese iconography and symbols and whatnot that get mixed in there.
Yep.
So basically, they sort of become the sort of generic East Asian themed legion with a heavy emphasis on Mongolia as opposed to just all of East Asia. But like, if you want to put like a bonsai tree on someone's flag, it's going to be a white scar. If you want to see someone with a katana, it's probably going to be a white scar.
Right.
So the White Scars are also narratively one of the sort of forgotten legions that there's just not that much fiction about them. I think part of that is that they just don't always sell super well.
That's
Um,
kind of
their
surprising,
color,
actually.
yeah, it's you would think they would do better, but it turns out that the Weebs don't play Space Marines; they play Eldar or Tau, depending on what
Oh,
kind
I
of
guess
Weeb they
that.
are.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense.
Yeah,
There's not like interesting, but also maybe they haven't had a chance in a little while.
I would agree with you.
So that
So
might be the shtick.
yeah, so Jagatai Khan lands on a planet called Chagoris, and it is a planet with relatively few settlements in terms of permanent settlements, and a lot of nomadic horse riding clans, as you might not be surprised to learn for the
Oh,
Mongolian
what?
themed guy.
No, you
Yeah,
don't say.
yeah. Look, Warhammer is often very on the nose. So,
Oh,
yeah.
oh, you
So,
really?
he unites the largest group of horse riding nomads that has ever been seen. So basically, he just lives out the life of Genghis Khan with less rape.
Well, I guess that's a win.
Yeah. Um, So yeah, there's that. And so when the Emperor comes, his legion already were noted for really liking swift hit and run tactics. So they would descend on jet bikes from the sky and just blitz through some enemy
As you do.
formation and disappear before the enemy has even time to figure out what exactly happened, only
Cool.
for them to strike from a different angle. And so that fits perfectly with Jagatai Khan's cavalry based nomads that he's been leading. Um, and so he's given control of the White Scars, and it's relatively a smooth transition. Not a lot changes. Their color scheme is mostly white with red accents, and they also like jagged shapes, kind of like mountains or lightning bolts on bits of their armor. So you'll see like red markings like that don't follow necessarily like any trim lines or anything. They're just painted on. Um, and unfortunately, there's just not that much about the White Scars. They're there. They're the guys who like and land speeders. Um, and that's most of it.
Well, somebody's got to get left behind with all this stuff getting made.
They're not the only ones that have a little bit of a dearth, but they are one of the least talked about legions, and it's kind of sucks because I think there's a lot that you could do with that, and there would be a lot of really cool successor legions that you could do that could be based on different like traditional warrior culture, well, not cultures, but like traditional warrior groups from various like East Asian cultures.
Oh, there's
Like,
so
why not give
many.
us yeah, like why not give us a Space Marine chapter whose iconography and decorative bits come from like samurai or like who are using like the Chinese style straight sword or something with the little tassel at the end. Like,
Yeah,
give
yeah,
us more
yeah.
of that stuff. There's a
Yeah.
lot of really cool art and motifs that you could pull out of East Asian culture to add onto your Space Marines.
And it would
But for the
probably
most part, it's
do
just kind of
really
like,
well
eh,
if you want to break into the Chinese market. Oh, you could do and like also like East Asia and also India had some crazy nonsense going on that you could make some really cool shit out of.
yeah. So I do know that Warhammer does pretty well in Japan. So they
That
are
doesn't
at
surprise
least
me at
doing pretty
all.
well in Japan. I don't know how they're doing in China or South Korea, but I do know that there's a pretty big contingent of Japanese Warhammer fans.
All I'm saying is there's a
I know
market
that
there and you're missing out.
yeah, Japanese I believe is still one of the supported languages for Games Workshop books, so they translate their books into Japanese. They dropped
That's cool.
Portuguese recently,
Oh, really?
which upset a lot of Brazilian fans. Yeah,
That yeah.
they were just like, you
Fair.
know what, Brazil, you can read the books in another language, but we're not printing them in Portuguese anymore. Sorry.
How long ago was that?
Um, it was pretty recent. I think it was a couple years ago.
Okay, years. That's what I was wondering if it was like recent as in months or recent as in years.
Well, okay, but for me, like, the franchise stretches back to like the early '80s. So
Yeah, 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 yeah. That's why I was asking because it's relative, right? I'm
yeah,
not saying you're wrong
like
by
from
saying recently. I was just more like I didn't know what you if you meant
yeah,
recently, like not too long ago, as in they might change their mind if we talk about it.
nah, it's been a while.
Been a
I
been
don't
a
think they're
while.
changing that one.
Yeah, no, probably not.
So so that was the Weskars at the Fifth Legion. So the Sixth Legion are the Space Wolves, although they don't call themselves Space Wolves, and they find it mildly annoying that other people do.
Okay,
They don't like that name. However,
so we all call them
they
that on
don't like
purpose. Got it.
well, there's that, but also like they don't hate it enough that they're like gonna make a big stink about it. But like if you're friends with one, he might be like, "Hey, by the way,
Don't call me
that's
that.
not our name for ourselves. We maybe don't." Um, so they were one of the legions that before they found their Primarch, there was noted instability in their gene seed. So when people were implanted with this, sometimes they would just turn into like werewolves permanently, which isn't great because now they're uncontrollable, mostly unintelligent humanoid beasts that are 8 feet tall, covered in fur and fangs and claws that just want to kill things.
As you
Which might
do.
right now, like it's not like that's completely useless. You could just round them up and drop them in the middle of an enemy fort or something, and just let them go crazy until both them and the enemy are dead, which like is a thing that you could do. But it's overall not great when at any point some significant number of your legion could just turn into ravening werewolves.
Yeah,
who are
that's
just as likely to kill their allies as they are their enemies.
yeah, that sounds like it's probably a little bit problematic.
Yeah, it's not great. It's not great. So Leman Russ ends up on a world called Fenris. That's their Primarch name. Now, one thing I want to point out is Leman Russ is actually also the name of a tank. And this goes all the way back to the first edition of the game, where Leman Russ was just a human general who was, quote, the founder of the Space Wolves chapter, because a lot of this lore hadn't really been established yet. And so, yeah, he just had a tank named after him in the Imperial Guard for no particular reason. Now, it turns out that, like, later on in the lore, they were like, oh, well, the reason is the Space Wolves were the ones who came across the blueprints for this tank. And so the Mechanicum named the tank after Leman Russ because he's the one who discovered it. And it's like, yeah, okay, sure, whatever, I guess.
Fine.
Yeah. The original name of the Legion was the Rout, because they would go in and rout enemies with their ferocity and their scariness.
Oh,
They were often called the Emperor's Enforcers because they were often sent in as an intimidation tactic. Like, do you want to deal with these guys? Or do you perhaps want to do this the easy way?
yeah.
And if you did not want to do it the easy way, well, then you had to deal with the route. So Fenris is an unusual world. It is generally considered to be impossible by like planetary scientists in the Imperium, such as they are. It has a very, very long orbital period and has a very eccentric orbit. And so for much of the year, the planet is locked in ice, and only around like the equator is there any open ocean or anything.
Oh,
But then as it approaches
chilly.
its host star and the star gets bigger, the ice will thaw for a very short but also very violent summer, because that's also as a result of increased tidal forces when volcanic activity starts to pick up. So you switch from ice to horrible fiery volcanoes that are just reshaping the landscape constantly.
Yeah, that's gonna mess
And
with
as a
your like
result,
equilibrium.
yeah, yeah. So as a result, there is very little in the way of civilization on Fenris. They are primarily like Neolithic technology hunter-gatherer tribes. Also, Fenris famously has several species of what are called Fenrisian wolves, although there is some debate, both in lore and out in the real world, as to whether or not these are actually wolves. Seems like they're probably not wolves in the sense of like being descended from like, the genus Canis on Earth. But they look a lot like wolves and they act a lot like wolves, except that they range in size from like the size of a black bear to slightly larger than a polar bear.
If it looks like a wolf and it walks like a wolf and it talks like a wolf, maybe it's still not.
Yeah.
But don't worry about it.
Now, the Space Wolves are one of the examples of Games Workshop being very on the nose, because basically everything they do has the word wolf in it somewhere. It's like, oh, these are the Wolf Guard, and
Wonderful.
that's a priest, and these are the Wolfen, and this is the Wolf Axe. And it's like,
You
okay,
guys can't be
thanks.
mad that everybody calls you puppies when you name everything wolf. Like,
Right.
I
Yeah.
feel like you're doing it to yourself at that point, and you can't blame
They
other
are.
people. Like, stop.
They are.
Next, you're gonna tell me
So,
it's racist.
yeah. So Lehman Russ ends up on Fenris, and basically he becomes sort of a beacon for the local tribes there, because he is able to destroy all the horrible monsters like the Krakens, and he's able to tame the otherwise untamable Fenrisian wolves and whatnot.
Ooh, he's
And
Wolf Jesus.
he basically is, yeah. So when he's reunited with his legion, he is able to stabilize their gene seed with the introduction of something called the Canis Helix, which
Oh,
basically stabilizes them and
the
significantly
wolf
lowers the chance, but
gene.
it doesn't. Yeah, exactly.
Still called it Canis. What do you
Yep, yep,
mean?
yep. I know. So
Brother.
they went. It basically vastly reduced the chances, although it didn't eliminate the chances of someone becoming a crazy werewolf. And when they do become crazy werewolves, they don't lose all control anymore. They lose
Low
most of
energy
the control.
vids said Space Vikings Dog Girl Edition.
Yeah, so they do have a very strong Viking theme. They're covered in runes, and they're always using axes and wearing like fur pelts and whatnot. So
Uh,
they are definitely if you want a Viking army, they are the ones to go for.
so
They all have
they're
very
like
Germanic
horse
sounding
girls where
names.
everything is horse themed but wolves instead.
Yeah, basically they're wolf boys.
That's fun.
Yeah, they're Viking wolf boys specifically.
Viking wolf
Oh, and yes,
boys. Hmm.
All of the races are angry at Space Marine 2 right now because they're releasing new face and voice packs for 3 chapters, one of them being the Space Wolves. And the Space Wolf is black. And they're all like, I'm sorry, that's not historically accurate. And it's like, hey man,
What?
there's
The
this historically
Space
accurate
Wolves aren't
40,000 years in the
historically
future.
accurate?
Yeah, none of this is historically accurate because there's no history to be accurate to. There you
Yeah, it's
go.
happening in the future. We did a whole video about that.
Yep. So yeah, but it's always fun. Of course, the racists were also angry when there was a black ultramarine, and it's like there's literally
Oh yeah, I remember that.
you could make the argument that given how little sunlight there usually is on Fenris, that most people there would be pale, and
Probably.
therefore, since that's a primary recruiting and to some extent exclusive recruiting role for Space Wolves, that it would make some sense biologically that pretty much all of them would have pale skin.
Sure.
But there is no such argument for Ultramarines. The Ultramarines have like hundreds of worlds that they are able to recruit from with varying cultures and varying climates and varying levels of solar radiation and whatnot. They should look like just about anything.
Yeah. I mean,
And
isn't
yet,
that the
still
point
they're
of
like,
them? They're supposed to kind of be made out of everything and
yeah,
anything.
they're the most generic of the Space Marine legions on purpose. And it's like, why are there black Ultramarines? It's like because there would be no reason for there not to be.
All right, how does that look?
I'm liking it.
You like that?
Yeah.
It's still a little rough, but I think we got a pretty good concept going now.
Yeah. So pre-heresy, the Space Wolves have a pretty neutral gray color scheme, and their companies are all called great companies, and they have their own specific heraldry. So they don't have a lot of the standard iconography that a lot of the other legions do. And each great company is sort of like in a friendly rivalry with all the other great companies and whatnot. Not that they don't get along, but they also famously make some of the only alcoholic beverages that can actually get a Space Marine drunk. So the Space Marines, one of their implanted organs is called the ulotic kidney, and it largely filters out pretty much any toxin almost instantly, including alcohol. So yeah, the Space Wolves brew a special mead that is extra potent and also contains extremely deadly toxins, and the goal is to overwhelm the ulotic kidney with filtering out all the deadly toxins, such that the alcohol actually has time to pass the blood-brain barrier, so that the Space Wolves can get drunk.
So of course it's mead.
Yeah, well, obviously because they're Vikings. But the
Is it
other thing
right?
is that they basically sober up almost instantly if they stop drinking.
Are they kind of like are they like dwarf wolves too?
Yeah, they got a little bit of dwarf going in there. Like almost all of them have beards and whatnot, and yeah, doing casting runes and whatnot.
Oh, fun,
Because
fun, fun.
the modern dwarves also take a lot of Viking influence.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
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 Um,
Yeah.
oh, there actually are dwarves in 40k. There are basically 2 kinds of space dwarf in 40k. So there's also space dwarfs that also use runes. So why not? So yeah, before the heresy, their color scheme is a very neutral gray, but after the heresy, and there's no particular time this happens, it's basically just a change in how they're painted by the studio in Games Workshop that has been retconned into a change in their heraldry. They become a much cooler gray to the point that now they're actually just a low saturation blue.
Oh. Well, I do
They're
like
said to
that
be
there
gray, but
is some I am a fan of like having a little bit of multiple options of dwarves. That doesn't always
yeah.
happen.
So there are two. So for the dwarfs, there's one faction that you can play in 40k, but if you play Necromunda, one of the clans there are what are called squats, which are very similar to the general dwarf species, but they have some historical differences that have caused cultural shifts. So I'll go real fast into what the whole dwarf thing is. So the main faction of dwarfs in the game are called the Leagues of Votan. They mostly live in the galactic core. They have these machines called ancestor cores that they upload their memories to after they die, and that basically that's sort of their version of the afterlife. And these cores are
They're
also in charge.
illithid dwarves.
Yeah, kind of. In fact, the ancestor core is in charge of the cloning processes. That
Correct.
is how the kin come about.
Oh.
But sometimes kin who have left the galactic core have, at various points, lost their ancestor cores and have started to keep up their numbers, not through cloning, through boning, the
Uh,
old-fashioned way.
yeah.
And so they have developed less. They become less like illithids in terms of like having an ancestor core they upload their brains to, and more like the sort of standard fantasy tropes of like ancestor worshipping dwarves. But both factions are big on mining and mercantile operations and whatnot. And so, while a lot of factions are like, "Oh, we're going to conquer your world for the glory of the chaos gods or for the greater good," they're like, "Yo, the price of nickel on the galactic market increased 5%, and we just found out that your planet has nickel deposits. So
So
we
they're
own your
like
planet now."
Ferengi dwarves.
Yeah, yeah.
That's fun.
It's like, yep, we've decided that we own your nickel deposits now.
I like it.
If you don't like it, you can answer this guy. He's got a big flamethrower.
I do like it. That's wonderful.
Yeah. So that was a quick diversion to the dwarves. So yeah, the ones that have lost their ancestor cores and have to some degree integrated into the Imperium are sometimes called squats. And originally, squats were an Imperial faction that you could play in like the first edition, but they got dropped very
Oh.
fast.
Hmm.
And for a while, if you mentioned them on the official forums for Warhammer 40k, that would be an instant ban from Games Workshop
What? Why?
because they did not like that the people were still trying to ask them questions about the squats.
But why?
I don't know. In fact, it became the to the point where anything that got retconned out of the setting was said to be squatted
That's
because of what happened to the squats.
hilarious. What year did this happen? Because like I'm kind of now wondering if this
Oh,
happened in a it happened to happen in a year when
I think late '90s, late '80s, early '90s,
oh
like
man, yeah,
really early
that's
on.
yeah, wacky. I was wondering if it was like maybe related to some kind of I don't know, like cultural issue or something.
I think it was to a large extent that they were trying to divorce 40k from just being fantasy in space because they wanted it to get its own identity,
Oh, okay.
and they
I
didn't
mean
really
that's
have a good
fair.
thing. They didn't really have a good way to integrate the squats into their new vision for the franchise. Um,
That's
but they
fair.
also, in an offhanded article, someone said, "Oh, the squats, yeah, the Tyranids came and ate their homeworlds, so they're gone now." And that was the only explanation we got for decades was that they got eaten by bugs. And it's like, oh, okay, I guess.
Yeah, all
Um,
right. I'll buy it. I'll buy that. That's fine.
so after
They can always come
the
back later.
Rangdan, after the Rangdan genocides, the Space Wolves start becoming not known as the Emperor's enforcers, but the Emperor's executioners, which is a little bit more intense. And so during the Horus Heresy, Magnus the Red, who's a Primarch we'll talk more about in a bit, ends up trying to worm the Emperor via psychic means that he had been forbidden from using. And this causes a whole heap of problems on Earth. So the Emperor, not really receiving the message, just knowing that, Magnus done fucked up,
Yeah. Okay.
sent Lehman Russ and the Space Wolves. He was like, hey, I need you to bring Magnus to me. So get to the homeworld where he and bring him here. Well, Horus, the guy that the Horus Heresy is named after, intercepts this, and he's like, "Yo, change of plans. You're there to kill Magnus the Red and annihilate the Legion. So that's your new plan."
Oh boy.
Yeah, because Magnus had been trying to keep Horus from falling to chaos, and Horus saw this as an opportunity to just take Magnus and his entire Legion off the board.
I
So,
mean,
yep. And at this
yeah.
point, basically only Magnus and a couple other Primarchs know that Horus is in any way a traitor. And when Magnus tried to get the word out, it didn't
Hmm.
work. So the Space Wolves show up to their homeworld and they just go nuts. Lots of killing. And so this ends up actually being the thing that one creates a 10,000 year hatred between the Space Wolves and the Thousand Suns, which we'll talk about later. And is also one of the reasons why the Space Wolves have a reputation for being the ones who you use to bring renegade Imperial factions back to heal.
Yep. Screen's gonna go
Um,
black for a second. I have to restart Krita.
boo.
Or it won't go black. It'll just freeze for a
Yes,
hot
yeah,
second.
yeah. So yeah, that is the Space Wolves. Next is the Imperial Fists. So the Imperial Fists are one of the least changed groups of Space Marines from before and after the Heresy. They didn't change their heraldry, which is still mostly sort of a like a dull yellow, like not dull, but like low
Mustard.
value but high saturation.
Mustard.
Yeah, sort of
Bright,
mustardy.
bright mustard.
Yeah. Their symbol is a black fist, gauntleted fist, and it's usually circled with a black circle, and there's a white background on that. Their Primarch is Rogel Dorn. Rogel Dorn ended up on the planet Inwit, which was a frozen wasteland, and we
Mm.
don't have a whole lot of stories about what he was doing on Inwit. But the homeworld of the Imperial Fist very quickly became Earth itself, because they ended up being the army that was in charge of uh, the fortifications around Earth and in the solar system, and they were siege defense specialists. So while the Iron Warriors tended to be the siege breakers, the Imperial Fists tended to be experts at setting up fortresses and stuff. And there was a lot of overlap, right? Which is why there was a lot of rivalry between the Iron Warriors and the Imperial Fists. But Rogaldorn is also one of the very no nonsense Primarchs, who's very much into like, we're going to analyze the best path to victory with the least losses for our allies, and we're going to execute that plan. It's going to go according to plan. One notable thing is that unfortunately, the Imperial Fists and their successors, they can't spit acid like other Space Marines, nor can they take crazy long naps like other Space Marines. So yeah,
That's too bad.
Space Marines. Most Space Marines can send themselves into like a form of like hibernation, where they barely need any oxygen or food, and they can stay like that for hundreds of years if they need to. Yeah, Imperial Fists can't. Also, most Space Marines can. Their saliva is like moderately acidic, and
Oh.
not the Imperial Fists. They got regular old spit.
Oh.
Yeah, but
Hmm.
also some of the big like really important chapters that come about after the heresy are Imperial Fists. So the Black Templars, which is one of the biggest chapters in the 41st millennium, mostly because they exploit a loophole in the Codex Astartes that says,
Ah.
"Hey, you can go past 1,000 Marines if you're on crusade." And so their founder was just like, "What if we're always on crusade? Always?"
Ah.
Yeah. So like no one knows how many Black Templar there are. In fact, it's entirely possible that the leader of their chapter, High Marshal Helbrecht, doesn't also know how many actual Black Templars there are. Like, it's probably a lot. It's definitely a lot. Way more than the Codex would normally allow for. But at this point, everyone's kind of afraid to call them out on that. Um, yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah, they were founded by Sigismund, who was a one of the greatest sword like duelists, and was called the Emperor's Champion. And so his sword remains a chapter relic. So they're another Imperial Fist successor. Also, the Crimson Fists, who are, at least last I checked, led by Pedro Cantor, are an important Imperial Fist successor chapter. They basically have the same chapter symbol, except it's red, and their armor color is a deep blue, and they have a crimson like accent color for their chapter symbol and whatnot. And so they remain one of the biggest, like the Imperial Fist successor chapters are all like sworn to defend Earth. And so a few times groups of them have come together to help defend. And Earth is still technically the chapter homeworld of the Imperial Fists, but that's only sort of like on paper. In reality, they have a gigantic space fortress called the Phalanx, which actually serves as their chapter homeworld. Mostly because Earth is full. There's not a whole lot of room for a big chapter monastery. So, the Imperial Fists were also, like I said earlier, they were the ones that Perturabo tempted over to his gigantic fortress that was guarding nothing. Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um,
Yes. I like that. I like that's such a real. That's a really good plan, though. It's a really good plan to be like, I'm gonna fuck this guy over by baiting him into a giant fight for over nothing.
Yeah, literally nothing. There was nothing in there. Yeah, like after the Iron Warriors abandoned it, eventually it was like explored, and there was just a series of traps and kill boxes and whatnot. That's all it was,
That's
all
the
the
kind
way
of
down.
shit that like that's like some Tomb of Horrors shit.
Yeah, yeah. Like, oh look, a dungeon. What's at the end of it? Nothing. There's no treasure. There's just a whole bunch of death before
The
the
place
middle
has
of the
been long since ransacked. There's fucking nothing
right.
here. What do you want
Mm-mm.
about? Oh no, my
So,
pen is doing that thing where it thinks I'm clicking all the time.
oh, I hate that. Ugh.
Ah,
So the Eighth Legion is the Night Lords, or as they were called before they found their Primarch sometimes, the Night's Children, because why change your name much?
yeah, there.
So
Branding.
these were the terror troops of the Emperor. They were not sent in to intimidate people; they were sent in to horrify them into compliance.
Okay.
So we'll talk about Conrad Kurz, also called the Night Haunter, because he is the edgiest of all the edgy boys. So Conrad Kurz ends up on the pollution choked, always nighttime planet of Nostromo. Now, when I say it's always night, that's because the pollution is so thick that very little sunlight ever gets to the
Gee, I wonder
surface.
why it's called Nostromo.
Yeah, right.
Mm.
So it is primarily a mining and like metallurgy focused economy. However, it's also just a horrible, violent anarchy ruled by whichever gang can kill enough people to proclaim themselves in charge. And most Nostromans commit their first murder before puberty.
I see.
Yeah, so it's a pretty rough place. Conrad Kurz is also constantly haunted by visions of dystopian futures and horrible evils, and he believes that these are fated to actually occur because a
Oh,
lot of them
okay.
do, in fact, end up coming true when he has these visions. Like, there's one point where he
Right.
has two simultaneous visions. There's a kid who's murdered someone, and he has these two visions where, like, on one, he actually manages to take this kid under his wing, reform him, and he and this kid become like great architects of a new society on Nostromo. And then they go on to help create a utopian society in the galaxy at large. In the other vision, the kid stabs Conrad after Conrad tries to take him under his wing and
Yeah.
seriously injures Conrad. So Conrad kills him because he's like, well, it's probably the bad one that's going to happen, so I'm going to kill this kid now.
Better safe than sorry, I
Right.
guess.
He was the consummate pessimist, but he also believed he had a very strong sense of justice and right and wrong. And he
Okay.
believed that, generally speaking, humans were horrible, worthless creatures who would only do the right thing if they felt like the other option was completely out of the question. And why would they think it's completely out of the question? Well, because the Night Haunter will flay you alive with lemon juice soaked blades if you do the wrong option.
I mean, there's reason to believe that. Like I think that that's not beyond the scope of philosophy.
Right. So he goes on this, like, he basically becomes like even edgier Batman, murder Batman.
Oh, so he's Thomas Wayne as opposed
Yeah,
to
Bruce.
Bruce, yeah.
Yeah. So he goes around Nostromo killing in horrifying ways and publicly displaying the corpses of all of the various gang leaders and whatnot. And after that, he works his way down like the crime levels to the point where it's like, oh, I'm sorry, did you not wait for the cross signal? Well, I guess now you're going to be publicly executed. And so crime on Nostromo just kind of drops to zero because everyone is scared that if they like step out of line even an inch, that they're going to be horribly tortured and killed in public.
Well, and they might be.
That,
So,
that the thing is, yeah, they're right. There's a very good chance they will be.
mhm, mhm,
So
mhm.
the Emperor shows up, and this is something that Conrad Kurz has seen in his visions. But he also has seen in his visions that the Emperor's going to kill him. But he's like, yeah, but in my visions, I'm also, a general for this guy. So I guess we'll do it. Because he believes that his visions are, in fact, fated. So he doesn't think that there's options for him. So he goes along with it. And so the Night Lords become the absolute terror troops. So they actually pride themselves because they can often take worlds at the cost of only like no Space Marines, and often fewer than 100 people on the planet, right? So there's this one time when famously they show up to a planet and they're like, hey, you're going to join the Imperium. And, the planet's like, no, we don't want to. So
No.
they send up this ship to go, get rid of like the one little strike cruiser that has shown up in system. And when that ship comes back, it starts, its own regular powered descent back into the atmosphere. The citizens of the capital city of this planet are cheering and celebrating, like, oh, we did it. We scared off this whole weird Imperium thing. But then rather than landing, the ship opens up its cargo holds, and what drops out are the dismembered bits of every single person who originally went up in that ship. And the Night Lords are like, this is what will happen to anyone else who tries to resist. And the planet surrenders. Because they were like, yeah, okay. And so they famously, rather than going in and having a whole conquest, they would sometimes like grab a handful of warriors from whatever planet they're trying to conquer and just play over every radio frequency the sounds of the horrible tortures that they're being put through. Along with like, you can prevent this from happening to everyone else if you just surrender. And so their thing is like, look, the Iron Warriors might conquer... Oh, you're muted.
I said, yeah, let's do war crimes, because the war crimes will stop us from having to kill more people. So the logic is
Basically,
we kill less people because we horrifically kill a handful.
Right. And that is literally the argument they make whenever anyone objects, is like, look, when the Iron Warriors go in, or those Ultramarines go in, and they fight what you consider to be an honorable combat, it kills tens of thousands of people. We can conquer a world the same size, killing a handful of people. And yeah, it's going to be way more brutal when we kill those few. But like, now you have an entire intact planet that hasn't been ravaged by years of war. Well,
yeah, that
really
then still has all of its resources and still has most of its people and its culture that can be salvaged in X, Y, or Z ways for whatever you want. I mean, there is a logic behind it. It's not very healthy, but like, none of this stuff is healthy.
Well, no, it's not. But one of the problems is that when Conrad comes to the Legion, it is basically a bunch of Terran-born legionaries. But as is typical, the Legion starts recruiting from the homeworld of the Primarch, which in this case is Nostromo. But you know what's the only thing holding Nostromo together is Conrad. So when he leaves, it very quickly turns back into Murder Planet.
Right.
Because he's not there. And so the new recruits that he's getting stop being these Terran-born Marines who have a sense of duty and justice. It might be a twist and a dark sense of justice, but it's there. And instead, slowly the Legion starts getting taken over by people who just like inflicting pain and killing people. That's just fun for them.
Yeah.
So just absolute psychos. Right. Yeah. So in sort of a reverse where like the Legion the Iron Warriors hated Perturabo, but Perturabo didn't really hate the Iron Warriors. It kind of turns into the reverse where the Night Lords don't hate Conrad Kurz, but he loathes them.
Right.
He hates his Legion because they're all a bunch of psychos. Because that's not
He's like, this was not the point, guys.
Right. So at one point, he goes back to Nostromo to see how it's going, and it's going so poorly, he just destroys the entire planet. He's like, you know what? Nope. Reset.
We're done here. Get me out.
Yep. You might not be surprised, but this Legion turns traitor.
I don't think it's them that turned traitor at that point.
Well,
unless you were going to consider what they were doing already traitorous. So either they went traitor and then he blew them up and then they made them actually purposefully go traitor, or he betrayed them because he couldn't control them the way he wanted to.
The actual legionaries don't really care about him destroying their planet because they're just a bunch of sadist assholes.
Yeah, they're all like, yo, no, fair enough, yeah. All right.
But he decides that this whole like Imperium thing, there's just no point. He basically goes into like a nihilistic tailspin, and he's like, "I'm fated to be killed."
Said an entire chapter of dentists.
Yeah, basically. So he basically goes into this nihilistic tailspin where he's like, "Nothing matters. I'm fated to get killed by the Emperor anyway." Pledging to Horus. So this is another one of the Chaos Space Marine legions that does not actually dedicate itself to a particular god, and also aren't huge fans of the Chaos Gods in general. They're much more like anarchists. They're like, no one gets to tell me what to do. I'm going to go kill and maim and torture people for funsies, And if you try to tell me not to, fuck off. I'm no
Yeah.
one's servant. And that also has meant that they are also one of the more fractured of the legions. They exist now as mostly small, scattered war bands. Um, and they're also the origin of one of the special Chaos Space Marine groups called the Warp Talons, who use jump packs and have big claws on their boots and gauntlets that they just use to tear up people.
Yeah.
Their color scheme is a dark blue with silver trim and usually lightning patterns, and it's not clear if the lightning is supposed to be painted on the armor or if they just have crackling lightning on their armor.
Oh.
Yeah, that's actually pretty close to the Night Lord's color right there. And so, like in some art, you'll see that there's actually lightning coming off of their armor and crackling between different places. And then in other art, it's just painted on, which you would think kind of goes in contrast to the fact that they try to be stealthy normally. But I just go with, well, if it's actual lightning, they can probably decide whether it's there or not. So they just turn it off when they're trying to be stealthy. Problem solved.
Sure,
right?
sure. Yeah.
Turn it on when you're going to scare people after you snuck up on them. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Also, Sinar Izu says, yes, this is when he builds the Screaming Gallery. I want Chesh to guess what that entails. Yeah, well, Chesh, what's the Screaming Gallery?
I'm assuming it's a gallery with screaming in it.
That's not false, but it also leaves out the most important part.
Okay.
So, after the Horus Heresy, Conrad knows that he's going to be assassinated, and he decides to let it happen. But he's going to build his own little place to brood in, because he's going to be a big sad boy.
He's going to be a boy. Yeah. I got you.
So in this, he builds a big room that he likes to be in that is just made out of the still living, stitched together bodies, humans who are all in agony and screaming constantly, and that's
it's like a flesh golem.
Yeah, except it's a room instead of a thing that walks around.
So it's like, it's a room made out of flesh golem, or like, what are they called? The lumps of flesh in the Nine Hells they're like lumps.
Lemures.
They're like Lemures. Yeah. Those things. They're like a bunch of those, or a bunch of gibbering mouthers that are all but they're screaming and not just gibbering.
Yep. Because he literally took people and stitched them into the building.
And made a wall out of them. Yeah, okay, yeah.
Yep.
It's like the living wall, but more horrifying, I guess. I don't know, the living wall is pretty fucked up.
Oh, yeah.
We don't really talk about how the living wall is a fucking nightmare.
Yeah. But, so he allows himself to be assassinated and instructs his legion, hey, don't let the assassin go so that she can carry back word that I was right back to the wider Imperium.
I need everybody to know that I was correct.
Right. He thinks that this is the ultimate validation of all of his previous beliefs. The degree to which that's true, I'll leave that up to someone else to figure out. But then
this sounds like how I feel about Aerith summoning Holy at the end of Final Fantasy VII. That's not real. That is just the characters coping.
So there's really not a big change in their Legion colors before and after the Heresy. Their symbol is a white skull with red bat wings that comes up from either side.
Oh,
because of course they're the edgiest of all the edgy boys.
Yeah. Some Nosferatu nonsense.
This is one of the places where like the Night Lords actually have a lot of physical similarities to another Legion we're going to get to, the Raven Guard, in that they both end up having, like when you get their gene seed, you become pale, black-eyed, straight black-haired goth.
Definitely not undead.
Yeah. I forgot to mention, the Space Wolves usually get big old fangs when they become Space Wolves.
Oh, I mean, I think that went without saying when you said they were werewolves.
Yeah. Well, even the ones who don't become werewolves still get longer canines.
That's cool.
So, it's actually one of two legions that get fangs. So, the next one is the other legion that gets fangs, which is the Blood Angels.
Hey!
So, the Blood Angels famously had one of
the Blood God
stable... Well, actually, interestingly enough, they do not fall to Khorne.
Oh,
they are not Blood God worshippers. Yeah.
How do you call yourself Blood Angels and not be hanging out with the Blood God?
They're vampires.
I'd still... No, that doesn't answer the question.
Well, they're not generally just all about killing. Don't get me
I
wrong,
do
they're a
like that
lot
the
about killing.
vampires and the werewolves are the Fang boys.
Well, yeah, obviously.
Yeah.
So the Blood Angels famously had one of the least stable gene seeds. Not the absolute least, that's going to go to the Thousand Sons, but they're up there for trouble with implantation, lots of rejection, lots of mutations. And it at one point looked like the Legion was just going to go extinct. And oh well, down a Legion, I guess. Um, but fortunately for the Blood Angels and for the Imperium, I suppose, Sanguinius was found on the world of Baal, which was a desert world that had been irradiated, and he was one of the only like. So most of the inhabitants of Baal were mutants of some kind, but he was a
Yeah.
mutant that whose mutation, rather than being horrifying and gross, actually just made him seem all the more beautiful because he had big old white angelic wings coming up from his shoulders that he could in
Oh,
fact use to
okay.
fly around. He's
Hi,
also the
Raziel. How you doing?
yeah, which is so it's why he's often called like the angel, is because he's got big old angel.
What?
I know, right? So,
What?
but the discovery of Sanguinius allowed his DNA to be used to stabilize the gene seed. And so, while it's still not the easiest recruitment to become a blood angel in terms of like compared to other legions, which is never easy, but like it had a higher success rate to the point that now
Sure.
the legion was no longer in danger of going extinct.
Right.
Also, they had had problems with occasionally becoming, in a recoverable way, but crazed berserkers, kind of like how the Space Wolves would do that. But whereas the Space Wolves, they would usually recover. Oh, sorry, they would never recover. They'd just be lost forever. You could get out of this. One was called the Red Thirst.
Oh,
And
okay.
so at this point, um, some of the Blood Angels will just be overcome with this Red Thirst. And what it
I'm
is literally,
hungry.
yeah, they
Don't touch
literally need to
me.
drink
I'm so
blood.
sensitive because I am also hungry.
Basically, yeah, but they need to actually drink blood. And so they would go into this rage and start tearing their enemies apart and drinking their blood. But if they didn't come out of it in time, they might turn on the non Space Marine allies they were fighting alongside to also quench their bloodthirst. And this is
Right.
something the Legion tried to keep on the down low because this seemed like the kind of thing that might get them deleted. Like previous legions had already been deleted, like the second and 11th legions.
Right.
So
And
Sanguinius
the
is
legion
also
that was
trying to
eaten by
keep this
bugs
right.
for squatting too much.
Well, it wasn't a legion, but yeah.
Right.
So Sanguinius is trying to keep this relatively quiet and trying to find out how to fix this. And his presence actually does put a calming effect on the rest of the Legion, and so they chill the fuck out.
Oh, that's good.
And so he's also one of the Primarchs who realizes that there is more to life than just fighting wars and killing people. And so he encourages basically all of his legionaries to pick up a hobby. Literally,
Pick up a
he's like,
hobby. Have you
start
considered crafting?
literally. It's like, hey, instead of just only ever worrying about killing, you should pick up sculpting or a musical instrument or painting or something. You
Go
should
outside
have
and touch some grass.
right. You should have an interest that is not just killing because we are fighting a war for humanity and humanity is not about killing. That's just something we currently have to do. And if we lose that sense of
Right.
humanity, then what are we doing this for? And so
Right.
that is actually a thing that actually ends up getting taken up. Most blood angels, both then and now, have some kind of artistic outlet that they do.
That's
Also,
cool.
to become a blood angel, after the implantation, you are locked into a coffin for years while being slowly fed blood from Sanguinius or one of the previous Space Marines from the Blood Angels. So, you know, keeping with the vampire theme.
Whatever, you're taking a nap.
Um,
You don't have to worry about it. It's not your problem.
Yeah. So the Blood Angels quickly become known as one of the most noble and also to some extent like the most human of the Space Marine chapters. Like they're the ones that
The irony.
right. But all this time they still have to deal with things like the Red Thirst. So they're also one of the somewhat
They're
secretive
trying to
chapters.
be human, but they're monsters, like vampires.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Whereas
Because
the
they're the
werewolves
vampire
are like, sorry, I'm too busy gorbling.
chapter. So the Blood
And meanwhile,
Angels
everybody else is like, goon time?
Well, at least the Emperor's children are. So the Blood Angels are there at the Siege of Terra, and it's Sanguinius, their Primarch, who goes up to with the Emperor to try to fight off Horus on his flagship. But they get separated on the teleport in. And so Horus ends up killing Sanguinius. And at this time, basically every single Blood Angel in the galaxy falls into this horrible rage as they can see themselves as Sanguinius fighting and being killed by Horus. And
Right.
this is called the Black Rage. And while, at least for this first one, a number of them do manage to get out of it, it's usually in the future going to be a permanent problem. So if a Blood Angel falls to the Black Rage, they gain the, like, sort of, I guess, the, I don't know, delusion that they are in fact Sanguinius, and whoever they're pointed at is Horus. So they'll go out slaughtering a bunch of orcs, thinking that that orc is Horus. Oh wait, no, there's another Horus over there. It's a different orc. I gotta kill that Horus. And so they are put under the command of chapter chaplains, and basically pointed in the direction of guys that the chapter wants dead, and they go and just go and chop them up into little bits. And then when those of them that survive are then basically like chained up in storage for next time. And when you become one of the when you follow the Black Rage, you become part of what's called the Death Company, and your armor is painted black with red X's on it, and that's pretty much it. Only one Blood Angel has really come back, and that is the Chief Librarian of the Blood Angels. The Blood Angels also are one of the legions that has a fair few successor chapters after the Heresy. Some of them are actually pretty popular, both in lore and to some degree out. So like they are the there's a whole bunch. There's like the Angels Sanguine, the Angels in Carmine, the Flesh Terrors, who are less popular in the setting, but very popular outside of the setting.
Yeah, I was gonna say why. They sound cool.
Yeah, well, they're unpopular in the setting because they will frequently kill their allies as a result of the Red Thirst. Because basically all of them, their particular chapter has the Red Thirst so bad that basically it's always there. They're pretty much always under its effects. So their current chapter master,
volatile.
Yeah, their current chapter master has been trying to restore their reputation by being more choosy about their deployments and only choosing to deploy in places where there are no allied forces nearby, so that all they can kill are the enemy. And they've actually become more respected because they're very effective at killing those enemies.
I mean, fair enough. Like, but I do enjoy something that I do really like about this. The whole Warhammer Legion lore so far is that there is still politics. Like you gotta have a PR team for your Legion. It's fucking great. I think that's great. I think that's wonderful. I love that.
Yeah, and actually, so in a more recent event, the homeworld of the Blood Angels, Baal, which is also sort of like the spiritual homeworld of all their successor chapters, is largely cut off from the rest of the Imperium and under attack by Tyranids. And so the chapter master of the Blood Angels, Dante, is like, calling all Blood Angel successor chapters, please come help. And so the chapter master of the Flesh Terrors, who were sort of only kind of invited, because they're still kind of on the outs. Yeah. So he shows up with a chapter serf in tow, and he's like talking to one of the Blood Angels as they're getting ready for this big conference. And the chapter master is like feeling a little hungry, so he just tears the head off the chapter serf he brought with him and drains that guy's blood. And the Blood Angels are like, dude, what the hell? He's like, what? That's what he's for. It's like, wait, you don't drink the blood of your chapter serfs? And they're like, well, we do, but we take it in sustainable amounts from a large number of them. We don't just drain them occasionally, randomly.
You just don't randomly grab a guy. What the fuck?
And he's like, that sounds like a lot of work.
It sounds like you're putting in a lot of extra effort here that I'm not into. Thanks, though.
Yeah. I'm just going to eat this guy now.
For anybody who's curious what I'm doing right now, by the way, I'm putting this is my light that keeps falling over with my camera. I'm putting a piece of Velcro with sticky on the back on this part, and then I'm going to put another piece of Velcro with sticky that's the other kind of Velcro on the camera so I can Velcro it on so it doesn't fall over as much.
Okay. Nice. So yeah, hopefully, other fan favorite chapters that are Blood Angel successors would include the Lamenters, who are
The
the most
Lamenters.
they're the most unfortunate of the chapters. They're one of the few
Well,
chapters that has.
life is so unfair.
I mean, they are repeatedly brought down to under 100 Marines in the entire chapter, like every
Dang.
time. Yeah, they also have a tendency to choose the wrong side in conflicts.
Well, stop doing that, and maybe you'll be like they just make poor decisions. That sounds like bad life choices, and they regret
Yeah,
those life choices. Is that like their whole theme?
basically, yeah. They're part of what's
Okay.
called the Cursed Founding, and every chapter that was founded during the Cursed 21st Founding is in fact cursed in some way, some very significant way.
Oh, okay. They're
Basically,
cursed to always make the wrong choice because that's fucking
well,
hilarious.
that the Lamenters often are. They're often so. What they often do is they try to make the choice that is the ethically correct choice, but it's Warhammer 40k, which means the
There is
ethically
no.
correct choice is usually the most impractical option that will not work out well.
And you may as well just the most ethical choices to not participate.
Maybe, but yeah, the Lamenters are also seem to be designed to make people who paint miniatures not want to paint them because they have a bright yellow color scheme, and if you know anything about painting, yellow paints usually have some of the worst coverage.
Yeah, you gotta paint
Um,
everything, gotta prime everything white.
but their favorite accent is white and black checker patterns, which you're trying to paint on a tiny little guy.
Oh, so they're
It's like,
bastards. Got it.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, it's a nightmare to paint. But if anyone actually has a really well painted Lamenter's force, that is someone to be impressed by because that is a lot of work. That is a person who
Okay,
knows what they're doing when it comes to
this
miniature painting.
almost works, but it isn't quite balanced, so I'm gonna have to make some tweaks. But I
Okay.
think it will. I think it will work. But go on.
So yeah, the Blood Angels are basically a very popular faction in terms of the game. A lot of people have Blood Angels armies. They and the Dark Angels were some of the first Space Marine legions to get dedicated supplements that allow you to play specifically Blood Angels or Dark Angels or their successors with rules that were not exactly the same as the generic Space Marine rules. And that has been the case for a while now, where there's rules wise, there is a difference between a Blood Angels army and a Space Marine army, even though Blood Angels are a type of Space Marine. So that's one of the
Sable
reasons why they're enduringly popular.
Sable Eye says fluorescent yellow with black and white checker pattern. Are they the UK police?
I mean, it's possible that that's actually part of the inspiration for the color scheme. I don't know.
Now I'm just imagining all of them are Cockney.
Actually, canonically, the orcs are all Cockney.
Wonderful.
They all have Cockney, thick Cockney accents.
Perfect. I love it.
Yeah. So let's see. Iron Hands with their Primarch Ferrus Manus, which is just Latin for Iron Hand. Because, again, super on the nose.
Not
Before
even
the
trying.
No. They were called the Stormwalkers before they found Ferrus Manus. Ferrus Manus, also called the Gorgon, because he was considered to be one of the ugliest of the Primarchs. Rough.
That's unfortunate.
Um, yeah, well, he ended up on the planet Medusa, because that's where the Gorgon is from, is Medusa. Because, again, we're super on the nose with this one, guys. There's
Yeah,
no
yeah,
subtlety here.
yeah.
Also, you'll never guess who has hands made of metal.
No.
Yes, his
No.
arms are in fact metal.
This guy.
So it's it is the most on the nose thing that has ever happened to anyone.
That is absurd.
So yeah, little baby Ferrus Manus ends up on Medusa, and he ends up fighting something called the Serpent of Medusa. And there's a few other names, and it's not explicitly clear what this is. However, it's pretty obvious what it is if you know about any like surrounding lore for the franchise. So he finds this great metallic dragon snake like beast, and he ends up killing it by plunging it into an open like lake of lava.
Oh.
And as his hands burn away, the metallic hide of the beast actually starts to melt and form back into the shape of his arms, giving
Oh.
him living metal arms, But if you know much about the franchise, you'll know that there's an entire faction composed of living metal that have big, like centipede-like war constructs as part of their military force that have been, taking a
Yeah.
65 million year nap
Right.
and periodically having some of their bits wake up. So yeah, he fought a Necron construct, and the
Oh.
necrodermis from that construct formed into his arms after they were melting in the lava.
Oh.
Right.
Oh.
So he is a famously good weapons crafter. So one of his, I suppose, hobbies is just making excellent weapons. In fact, many of the weapons used by many of the Primarchs were gifts from Ferrus Manus to his brothers.
Oh.
And famously, he and Fulgrim had a great friendship until the heresy, because they at first didn't really like each other because Ferrus Manus was all about practicality and just getting the job done and no nonsense. Whereas Fulgrim was, a foppish man all about making sure his armor was meticulous and, making fancy maneuvers with his sword during fencing. And Ferrus Manus was like, dude, just get on with it. Who cares how your armor is?
Bro,
So yeah, they didn't really
please.
right. So they decided to have a contest, and the
Mm,
contest was going to be, all right, we are
pretentious.
each going to make a weapon, but the weapon has to be for the other guy. So Ferrus Manus is going to try to make a weapon that's perfect for
Oh.
Fulgrim, and Fulgrim is going to try to make a weapon that's perfect for Ferrus Manus. And so they
I
both
like
go
it.
off into their forges and laboratories and whatnot and carefully craft some of the best weapons that the galaxy has ever seen and they hand them over. And they both decide that the other one has won the contest.
Oh.
Right. So then they're
Hmm.
both like, oh, wait, did we just become best friends?
Did we just become best friends?
And the answer is yeah, basically. And from that point on, some of the two of the
Cute.
closest Primarchs were Ferrus Manus and Fulgrim. However, Fulgrim, remember, was one of the first Primarchs to turn traitor.
Right.
He tried to convince Ferrus Manus, his best friend, like, hey, look, the Emperor has retreated from the battlefield. He's trying to turn the entire Imperium over to these, administrators and bureaucrats, and it's a whole disaster.
Yeah.
Horus is going to set things right. It's going to be like it used to be.
Oh.
Um, and
You're gonna
Ferrus just
make it
has none
great
of it.
again.
Yeah, we're going to make the Imperium great again. That's basically the Fulgrim's line to
Yeah.
Ferrus Manus. Ferrus Manus is not into it. He's like, nope, I'm loyal to the Emperor all the way to the end. And so Fulgrim leaves, but then later, during an event called the Drop Site Massacre, where a huge bulk of the Iron Hands have deployed to this planet Istvan, I think it was 4 or 5, I don't remember. Fulgrim decides he's going to go down and duel Ferrus Manus, and he actually decapitates Ferrus Manus.
Oh.
So Ferrus Manus is the first of the Primarchs to die.
Yeah.
He's not the last, but he's the first.
He
And
got
also,
got it.
there aren't that many that end up dying, but that's also the event that allows Fulgrim to ascend into being a demon prince, is killing
Oh.
his brother Ferrus Manus, his
Right.
former best friend.
Yeah.
Um,
Aw.
so similar to how this was a really bad time for the Blood Angels when Sanguinius died later, this was a really rough time for the Iron Hands, his legion. Now they did not have like a big psychic episode, but it basically reinforced all of the worst tendencies in the legion, because the legion had a tendency to be very mechanical in their thinking. In fact, they were big friends with the Mechanicum, later the Adeptus Mechanicus, and that is still
Right.
true. In fact, they're famous for being some of the first to ever come to the aid of various Forge worlds that are under attack or anything. It's like, yeah, the Iron Hands are going to show up. And as a result, the Mechanicus also supplies them with lots of things like Terminator armor and tanks and weapon upgrades and stuff. So they also tend to have some of the best kit out there. But they are completely intolerant of anything they see as weakness, including regular old humans who aren't as strong as they are, which is to say, aren't as strong as genetically engineered super soldiers with robotic parts.
Yeah. All right. It's. I
Which
guess.
is like, come on, man. That's not really fair.
That's a
They don't
little
care.
bit like, come on, man.
Yeah. So that tendency had always been part of the Legion, but Ferrus Manus was trying to get the Legion to see the value in humanity and to be like, you can't hold everyone to the standard of a space marine. That's not a reasonable thing to do.
It's a little
And
bit
so
unfair.
and so when he died being killed by, his former best friend brother. The lesson that the Legion took away from this was, oh, he was wrong about that whole being soft and understanding. We're going to go harder into the disdain for weakness. And
Oh,
so, yeah, now they're characterized by an absolute just do not give a crap about people who are in any way weak, which is just people in general.
which is
Um,
everybody.
Right. They ritually sever one of their hands and replace it with a robot hand when they finish their time as recruits. And they anytime that there's even a tiny bit of injury that would take some recovery time, if the recovery time for getting that limb or body part replaced with bionics would be faster, they opt for that.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So veteran Iron Hands are usually hard to distinguish from just a completely robotic creature.
Right,
There's
right.
almost none of their original flesh left. And some of their successor chapters are also, if anything, even more extreme about that whole disdain for weakness and not really caring about individual human lives. They do care about the survival of humanity as a group, but they don't care about your survival as a person.
Okay, yeah, yeah, yeah. I get that.
Yeah. So they're like, yeah, humanity needs to endure, and we're going to do what it takes to ensure that. But like, if what we think is going to be good for humanity's survival is to toss 50 babies into a meat grinder, well, then we'll do that.
We're tossing 50 babies into a meat grinder. Yeah, 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 yeah. I
Yeah.
get you, I get you.
Now, as it turns out, I don't think that's ever been the thing that they've thought has been the way to help humanity. But like, if they did, they would absolutely do it. They don't care.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I understand.
Um, their their chapter color, or well, Legion colors, or still their chapter colors, are basically just, it's either of an extremely dark black or it's an extremely dark metal, and it's not obviously clear which one it is. And the trim is also just a slightly lighter iron color. Their Legion symbol is a gauntleted hand with the fingers and extended, pointing up. And rather than being arranged into companies like most Space Marine chapters, the 41st Millennium uh, Iron Hands are organized into clans, each of which has their own specialties and slight variations on the ideology that they all practice. And that's largely true for their successor chapters too, and it was true for the legions as well. They were arranged into clans. It's the clans were bigger when they were a full legion. They do not have a lot of successors because a lot of them were wiped out at the drop site massacre. And that's what
Right.
going to be a theme that comes up is the chapters that did really poorly in the drop site massacre don't have a lot of successor chapters just because there weren't that many of them to split up after the heresy. So, if we're splitting you up into 1,000 man chapters, but there's only, 5,000 of you, well,
Right.
5 chapters. If we're splitting you up into 1,000 man chapters, but there's 20,000 of you, well, 20
Yeah.
chapters.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
So, yeah, there's not a lot of successors. Iron Hands are also one of the least popular legions in terms of getting lore about them or people saying that that's their favorite legion. But in many
Oh.
editions, they've been one of the most popular chapters to play as.
Oh.
Although usually what you do is you paint your army as something else and you just say, I'm running this as Iron Hands. And the reason is because they get a lot of bonuses for vehicles and walkers and whatnot.
Right.
And those are often very powerful. So like you're like, oh, I can take extra like land raiders with extra rules for the land raiders.
Right.
Which, fun fact, the Land Raider was not named because it can raid land-based facilities. It was
Oh.
named after Arkan Land, the man who discovered the pattern for it.
Ah, I
Yes,
see. It's funny how
he's a
that just happened to
man,
work out.
right? So Arkan Land was a Mechanicum tech priest who famously genetically engineered a monkey as a pet based on paleontological records from Earth, and he decided that the tails of the monkeys were clearly not limbs, like used as extra limbs for gaining grip on branches. That was silly. In fact, they
Oh.
were powerful predatory tools that were venom tipped and used to subdue or kill the monkey's prey. And so his genetically engineered monkey pet had a scorpion tail
Oh.
because why not?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, why not? Makes sense to me.
Yeah. So yeah, that is the Iron Hands basically. Next up is the 11th Legion. Okay, the 12th Legion, the World Eaters, or the Warhounds as they were known before they met their Primarch, Angron, the Red Angel. Guess what Angron's primary character trait is?
Angie?
Yes, he's in fact Angie. Now, that's actually one of the more tragic things. So every Primarch has some like quote unquote superpower, right? Some of them it's just like an exceptional ability at like knowing how to do a siege, like Rogel Dorn. Some of them it's like visions of the future, like with Conrad Kurz or later Lorgar. For Angron, it was actually empathy.
Oh.
So he could feel whatever other people were feeling, but also he could choose to make it so that he would experience whatever it was, but they wouldn't.
Oh, that's an unfortunate place to be.
So at first, he would go around finding people who were suffering and taking on their suffering so that they didn't have to while he was trying to, help out. But
Right.
he was captured and made a slave and forced to fight in a gladiator pit.
Oh,
But the thing is, his superpower being empathy, he was like, I don't want to do that. And so he would basically only defend himself and would refuse to actually kill the other gladiators, which was the whole point. He was put there because he was the biggest and the strongest guy they had ever found.
right.
Like, this guy would be a great gladiator. But he was like, no. So they
I
implanted something.
refuse.
Right. Because look, if your superpower is like inhuman levels of empathy, do you want to go randomly murdering other slaves? No.
No, that
That
sounds
sounds
like a bad time.
terrible.
Yeah.
Right. So his captors, realizing this wasn't going to work out, decided to just implant something in his brain called the nails.
Oh no.
The nails convert any kind of emotion other than rage and bloodlust into excruciating pain.
Oh boy.
Yeah. So the only time Angron has any relief from excruciating, torturous pain is when he's killing.
And then also that's still bads.
Yeah.
That
So
sucks.
they
Sucks to be this
they
guy.
turned him yeah, they turned him into a murder machine. And eventually he managed to gather to his side enough gladiators and slaves to create a slave revolt. And so he's going to go and annihilate the ruling class that were doing all this slavery and gladiatorial combat and whatnot. Because he's very, very angry at them for both good and bad
Oh,
reasons because of,
yeah, you
the
don't
nails.
say. I can't imagine
Right.
why.
But right as he's about to probably lose the final battle because he doesn't have enough guys,
Right.
the Emperor teleports him onto a ship full of what at the time were still called the Warhounds. And he's like, yo, you're my son. You should come fight with me. I'm going to try to fix the whole nail thing. Angron was super pissed because he was like, you kidnapped me. You kidnapped me. The very thing I didn't like in the first place.
Yeah.
And also made it so that my rebellion definitely is going to fail because I'm not there anymore.
Right.
Also that I could, fight some other war for you? I didn't want to fight this war in the first place, really. This is some
Bro,
bullshit.
you're doing the opposite of helping.
So, a bunch of various warhounds, the Space Marines, are go in to try to talk to him. Like, hey, Dad. So, I hear it's a bad time for you. And he just kills so many of them. Just so goddamn many of them. Eventually, one of them manages to get through to him. And he's like, all right, fine. I'll command this legion. But as time goes on, more and more. First of all, the Emperor continuously fails to find a way to remove the nails that wouldn't kill Angron. So that's just a permanent feature of him that never goes away.
Unfortunate.
But as time goes, his legionaries start wanting to emulate him. And what's the thing that gives him all his combat prowess and his crazy rage that allows him to just become a whirlwind of destruction on the battleground? What's the nails?
Oh,
so they invent their own version of the nails to implant, and eventually the entire legion has the nails.
Oh, great.
Yeah, so they all just become murder machines. And guess who sides with Horus?
Oh, gee, I wonder. Who could say?
Right, exactly. And also, guess which legion falls to the worship of Khorne? The Blood
God.
It's the guys who physically can't not be angry.
Yeah.
Those are the ones who fall to the Blood God, obviously.
I feel like that tracks.
Yeah. So before the heresy, and even during, their armor was white with blue trim, and their legion symbol was a set of jaws that were fanged and clamping down on an Earth-like world behind the jaws. Um, After the heresy, their symbol is similar, but it kind of gets rid of the world, and their armor turns to red and brass trim, which are the colors and trim color that are associated with Khorne. Now, there are some sources that imply that the red is actually just the same white, but it's just been stained with layers upon layers of blood.
Right.
I don't know how true that is. Most people don't paint it that way, and it doesn't usually look like that's the case in art, but
Right.
it's a thing some people say. Whatever. Believe it if you want to. It doesn't really matter. Um, so they were used as shock troops in the in the Great Crusade, and in the Horus Heresy, they were Horus's shock troops, and probably the most famous of them was someone called Karn, who before the nails was a dueling champion, who often would do things like try to cross blades with the Emperor's Children champions because they thought them of themselves as like the premier duelists, and that was in like controlled like settings where like this is a sporting sparring match, not a we're going to try to kill each other. But afterwards, he just became I'm going to try to find all of the best Space Marine duelists and kill all of them. And he had a friendship with Sigismund, who you might remember from the Imperial Fists, who was later the founder of the Black Templar.
Right.
They were buds because they were both really good duelists. Well, Karn decides, you know what? I'm going to kill that guy because he's one of the best duelists I ever fought. And so they have this big fight, and he ends up not really winning, but it's a bit of a stalemate. And later on, he gets the name the Betrayer because after the heresy, he is leading a World Eaters warband, and they decide that they're going to wait to attack till there's a more strategic opportunity. But he's like,
Okay.
yo, the Blood God demands blood, and he does not care about our strategy.
Yeah,
And
we're
so
not
he
waiting.
just starts killing. He just starts killing the other World Eaters until they decide to all go kill the Imperials. And so he then gets the name Karn the Betrayer. And so he's the most famous World Eater. Yeah, that's basically the World Eaters. Now we come to the poster boys, the 13th Legion, the Ultramarines, the ones that are on all of the box art, and the ones that if you talk to someone who doesn't know anything about the setting and say this is a Space Marine, they're going to think of the Ultramarines.
These guys, yeah, they're the
Right.
boys, the best of boys.
No, I want to be honest. I have Ultramarine fatigue. I am
That's
sick
fair.
of the Ultramarines. Now, I also want to say that is not because the Ultramarines aren't cool. They actually are, in fact, quite cool. It's just, it's getting old, right?
There's just a lot of
It's
them
like-
all over the place, all of the time.
Right. Like, you
Like
ever
hearing
have
a
a
song
sibling
too
who
often.
just... Right, yeah. Like, my sister used to watch our VHS tape of, what was it? Lady and the Tramp every single day until that VHS tape was unplayable. I think Lady and the Tramp is a pretty good movie, but holy crap was I sick of it. I was like, there is nothing I want to watch less than Lady and the Tramp. But Lady and the Tramp is a good movie. It's just my sister
Great.
played it every single day until the VHS wore out. And like, it's like, you gotta cool it. Figure something else out to watch. She was like, no, Lady and the Tramp. I'm like, okay,
No.
cool. We're doing Lady and the Tramp. That's my problem with the Ultramarines.
I like that
is
you're still salty about this. Clearly.
I mean, I'm salty when it becomes illustratively compelling to be.
Yeah.
Well, to be fair, I haven't watched Lady and the Tramp in a very long time.
To be fair.
Yeah. So anyway, that's the thing with the Ultramarines. So the Ultramarines, it seems like they were called the Warborn before their Primarch was found, and their Primarch is Robute Guilliman, which is in fact how it is pronounced. Although sometimes you'll hear people say other pronunciations, or sometimes they'll just say Rowboat Girly Man.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, because people are kind of tired of him. He was also the first Primarch to come back into the 40k setting after the Horus Heresy. So like everyone's just like, "Jeez, man, can we anything else?" And Games Workshop's like, "No, Ultramarines."
No.
Okay. So the Ultramarines are sort of the generalist legion. They are, if you are not sure what you're going to be facing and you need a legion who can have flexible tactics, that's who you want. Also, Robute Guilliman is famously a great administrator and also great at logistics, which sounds boring And many of his brother Primarchs, in fact, thought of him as boring because they were like, oh, supply lines. Yeah, cool. But here's the other thing. You can't fight a war unless you can get the supplies needed. Like, if you run out of ammo,
Yeah, you're
then what?
screwed. You need it. You need
Right.
that shit.
And Robude Gilliman is like the guy who's like, you can't ignore this. We have to have good logistics. We have to be able to like administer the fleets and the armies and whatnot. Like, that's an important aspect of this. All
Yeah.
the glory in war is fine, but if you can't figure out how to get the supplies you need, then what?
Yeah,
He's the one
you
constantly
can't
reminding
win.
everyone that
You can't have glory in war if you can't sustain a war.
right. He's the one who's always reminding everyone, like, hey, an army marches on its stomach, and
Yeah.
other such cliches. So when he's found, he lands on a planet called Macrad, and he basically becomes like the philosopher king of not just Macragge, but this whole area of like 500 different worlds called Ultramar. And he basically creates his own little tiny imperium within the galaxy when by the time the Emperor gets there. So the Emperor gets there, and there's this entire like secondary empire that's one of the largest human groups in the entire setting at the time,
Right.
other than the Imperium. And it's all just being run by his kid, Robute. And he's like, oh, well, this is convenient. Hey, Robute, would you like to fight for me and also become, a statesman in my even larger Imperium? And I will also grant large amounts of autonomy to Ultramar. And yeah, that is in fact what Robute
Yes,
would
that
like.
sounds lovely.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, and also here's a giant, one of the largest legions, a legion which will mysteriously swell up to even larger sizes when each of the 2nd and 11th legions are deleted from history.
Oh.
So there are also persistent rumors that the Ultramarines are actually partially made up of Marines from the 2nd and the 11th legions. It's never substantiated, and it's not even talked about publicly because that might get you in trouble.
Right.
But yeah,
We can't
that's a
have that.
persistent rumor. Yeah. And so that makes the Ultramarines be one of the largest of the legions throughout pretty much the entirety of the Great Crusade and the Horus Heresy. They are also one of the legions that takes the fewest casualties in the Horus Heresy, but we'll get to why that is later.
Right.
So their color scheme, both before, and during, and after the Heresy, is a unsurprisingly ultramarine color blue, accented with white legion or chapter markings, and then trim that is based on what part of the legion or chapter someone's from. But in pretty much all of the promotional material and artwork, the second company is portrayed because the blue and gold is a good color scheme, and that's the chapter color for the second company. So the second company are the poster boys for the poster boys.
I see. I understand.
So in lore, about as many Ultramarines are going to have red or green or yellow, or not yellow, but that's just the gold, or white trim or whatever. But you don't see that in the art much. You almost always see the second company. Although, interestingly,
Right.
the Total War Warhammer 40,000 trailer portrayed third company Ultramarines with red trim on their shoulder pads. So that was nice to see someone do something other than the second company. Yeah. So the Ultramarines have a very Roman aesthetic. At least they do when they're being Ultramarines. When they're just being generic Space Marines, they just don't have a particular theme. But they're supposed to be the Roman theme. So their veterans have like like the horsehair crest on like Roman legion helmets to denote rank. They'll have that. Their planets are just depicted as having like lots of like columns and Greek/Roman style statues and whatnot.
Yeah.
They're using Roman numerals all over the place, and yeah, and so after they're broken up into chapters, they retain control of Ultramar, but it's split between several different chapters, 10, I believe, if I'm remembering correctly. But the reason why there are so many Ultramarines make up about, like their successors are about 4/5 of all chapters, are Ultramarine successors. Now, the reason for this is they one of the largest chapters during the Heresy, but also they were trapped inside Ultramar by warp storms for most of the Heresy. So they couldn't actually get out to fight at the Siege of Terra, and they were absent for most of the major battles. And so this had two effects. One, it made it a lot harder for the loyalists because that basically just took out the largest loyalist legion, just
Right.
not really helpful. But also it meant that after the warp storms broke and they could finally get to Terra to help break the siege, they were also one of the most populous legions left afterwards, which meant that when it came time to split up the chapters, which was also Robute Gilliman's idea in the first place,
Right.
they became by far the most numerous legion represented in which chapters existed. So yeah, if you meet a random space marine, there's a very good chance that the Primarch that he's descended from is Robute Gilliman. This was actually the result of a whole plot by the Word Bearers, who had a particular grudge against the Ultramarines, and they basically orchestrated the warp storms that cut them off from the rest of the Imperium. And Gilliman and the Ultramarines actually set up something called Imperium Secundus because they were cut off both from travel and communication with the wider Imperium. And so for all they knew, the traitors had taken over and the Imperium had fallen. And so he was like, you know what? I'll make my own Imperium with hookers and blow and better logistics.
And better
So
logistics.
take that, traitors. And so that was folded back into the Imperium after the warp storms lifted. But yeah, for a little while, it looked like there was just, as far as the Ultramarines were concerned, they were the last remnants of the Imperium in Imperium Secundus. And that was them. So they remain sort of the generic Space Marine group. So like,
right.
on the one hand, if you're playing Warhammer, like the tabletop,
yeah,
and you want a legion that will give you an excuse to take as much of whatever Space Marine model as you want, they're convenient for that. Like, you want a bunch of Centurions, Ultramarines work. You want a bunch of Bikers, Ultramarines works. You want a mech heavy army, Ultramarines works. It's all fine. Go for it. All of it's reasonable in terms of the fluff for the Ultramarines because they're the super flexible ones. That also does make them a little bit of boring in terms of like flavoring. So, whatever. But yeah, Robute Gilliman he was the first of the Primarchs to return. So he was mortally wounded again by Fulgrim because Fulgrim's a dick. But he was put into a stasis chamber before he died and was held there, and his stasis chamber became like the focus of like religious life on Macragge and Ultramar more broadly. But with the more recent events that we talked about in the previous stream, like the opening of the Great Rift and the 13th Black Crusade, Belisarius Cawl and the Eldar leader of the Ynnari, Ivrain, teamed up to get him out of the stasis chamber and heal him so that he could help fight off the forces of chaos. And he has since become Lord Regent of the Imperium, which basically means that he's the Emperor in all but name. So Robute Gilliman has become very relevant again. He is the first of the two currently available Loyalist Primarchs in the game. The other one being, like we said, Lionel Johnson. All right, so that is the Ultramarines. So next is the 14th Legion, the Death Guard, with their Primarch Mortarion, because again, everything is on the nose. Yes. They were originally called the Dusk Raiders. Yeah, because before Mortarion was found, they liked to attack against the setting sun, both as a bit of an intimidation tactic, and also because then if you were relying on optical targeting, it was harder to see them if they were backlit by the sun. Whereas that was not a big problem for them. So,
praise the sun.
Their original coloring was sort of a dusty red, but when Mortarion took over, he basically went with like, hey, we're going to stop painting our armor. It's a waste of time.
Yeah, okay.
And so they just became the sort of the dull gray of ceramite, which is what Space Marine armor is made of, which is a super advanced hypothetical sci-fi ceramic. So there you go. Yeah. So Mortarion landed on a planet called Barbarous. And Barbarous was mostly inhabited by humans, but they were ruled over by alien overlords who lived high up on peaks that were full of toxic pollution. And basically this pollution was lower density than the air. And so it went up to the higher elevations, whereas the air lower was breathable. But still, a lot of the people there were sickly and had all sorts of cancers and whatnot, because while it was breathable, it was still like, LA on a hot day.
Right.
Not exactly great. Or actually, at this point now, maybe more like Beijing or Shanghai, since LA has cleaned up a bit. To be fair,
LA has been
but
trying its best.
yeah. So like, it not a fun place to live, and of course, the alien overlords in their mountaintop castles liked to just go hunting humans for funsies.
Sure. Yeah,
And
that tracks.
so one of them found the infant Mortarian and found out that not only was this human baby of exceptional size and strength and intelligence, but also was better able to survive the horrible toxic air of Barbarous. So this guy basically built an extra
Shrunk
fortress.
baby.
Basically, yeah. So this guy built an extra little like fortress for Mortarian, where he was going to raise Mortarian as a son, as sort of a fun little experiment.
For
And so it was
fun.
lower. Yeah, so it was higher than the humans could survive, but it was not as high as the alien overlords could survive because they were immune to this toxic chemical, whatever it was.
Right.
And so Mortarian was living out his life basically in largely in isolation from humans. But one day, in a story that's kind of like the story of the Buddha, he
Mm-hmm.
takes a trip outside the palace and encounters the humans and realizes, oh,
Oh.
I'm actually one of these guys.
Oh.
Yeah, and what is my dad and his buddies doing? Oh, they're hunting these guys for sport, like the guys like me.
Oh, I
Well,
feel a little betrayed.
yeah, don't like that. So he decides that he's going to once again lead a revolution because that's a thing that happens with a lot of Primarchs, is they lead a revolution against the unjust ruling powers of whatever planet. And so he decides that he's going to invent some respirators and he's going to get together a plucky band of human warriors to take over. And he starts destroying the lower levels of the forts and castles and whatnot of these aliens that are in control of Barbarous. And in a parallel with what happened with Angron, right as he's about to finally destroy the final palace, or die trying, because he is having trouble breathing now,
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
Emperor shows up and kills his dad for him.
Oh,
And he's like, I'm
thanks,
your real
Grandpa.
dad. And
Yeah.
Mortarian's like, you couldn't let me finish this fight myself? The fight against my adoptive, abusive alien father who was, a giant dick? Like, you're just going to do it for me? Okay, cool, I guess.
Thank you for saving
Great.
me. I didn't ask.
Yeah. So, like Angron, Mortarian's not super happy with this. But unlike Angron, he's not just going to go and like murder hundreds of, the Death Guard.
Sure.
Um, and
He's got a
so,
little bit more self control.
yeah, he does. He does. And so he takes over the Death Guard, and they become. He instills in them the value of tenacity and toughness. And his thing
Oh,
is just like, hey, did your leg just get blown off? Hop it off.
you'll
Just,
be
just
fine.
don't worry about it. You got this. And so he's big on like getting the best, not necessarily the best, but the most resilient armor. And his legion are already noted as some of the toughest of the Space Marines. Things that would incapacitate another Space Marine are things that the Death Guard will fight through anyway. And so that becomes one of his big things. And also, as a result of this, he's also chemical warfare becomes kind of his thing because that was
Oh,
a big part of Barbarous, right? So he starts inventing things like, hey, what if flamethrower, but instead of igniting flammable liquids, it shoots out acidic nerve gas?
oh,
Yeah. And what if instead of frag grenades, we have like white phosphorus grenades?
no.
Yeah. So,
I
another one of those
see.
the war crime legions.
Yeah,
Like the
yeah. I
Geneva
was gonna
Convention
say.
would be very unhappy with Mortarian. Very
Mm,
unhappy.
mm.
Um, so yeah, those become his big things is just toughness and chemical warfare. It's like the enemy can't fight if their lungs have turned into soup.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah. So he ends up siding with Horus because again, not very happy with how he became the leader of the 14th Legion in the first place. Not that he resented his Legion for that. He actually really cared about his Legion. He, in fact, was very popular with them, and he with them, or they with him, right?
Right.
But after the drop site massacre, when his fleet is trying to head off to their next assignment from Horus, they get trapped in a warp storm. And this normally Space Marines are largely immune to disease,
Right.
but a supernatural level plague shows up from the plague god, Nurgle.
Oh,
And
it's
so,
Nurgle.
right. So Nurgle sends a whole bunch of plagues onto all the Death Guard ships, and they're stuck in the warp. And basically, Nurgle says to Mortarion, hey, I will stop the suffering of all your sons and get you out of this, becalmed situation in the warp where you can't go anywhere if you just pledge loyalty to me. And for a while, Mortarion's like, no, fuck off.
Right.
But eventually, he gives in. He's like, all right, fine. I'll do anything to end all this nonsense suffering that's getting us nowhere and isn't helping anyone. And so he gives in. Now, it turns out this was all orchestrated by one of his sons, Typhus, who had already become a Nurgle worshiper and
Dun, dun,
became then
dun.
known as Typhon, the Herald of Nurgle. And those two do not like each other.
Well, I can't imagine why.
They hate each other. But Nurgle won't let them kill each other.
Oh.
And so they generally don't like each other. The war bands loyal to Typhon are usually not very loyal to Mortarion and vice versa. And they do occasionally work together. If they have to, they don't like it.
All right.
And so, what emerges out of this are what are often called the Plague Marines. And yes, it's Typhus, really, because it's all on the nose, Sable Eagle. Very on the nose.
Yeah, there's no subtlety here.
No, we don't do subtlety. This is the 41st... Well, actually, in this case, 31st Millennium, but we don't do subtlety. So the Plague Marines are, like, statistically, in the game, some of the toughest of the Space Marines. So they actually have a higher toughness score than other Space Marines, which just means that you have a lower chance of wounding them with any given weapon. Unless it's an exceptionally powerful weapon. And they usually have a special rule called Feel No Pain, which even if they fail all their other saves, gives them a chance to just not care anyway. They just don't take that damage.
Yeah.
And so visually, they have a sort of... So before this, they had unpainted armor. After they become the Plague Marines, their armor becomes sort of a dull chartreuse, which is basically just the color of snot.
Lovely.
Like diseased snot. Yeah. And so they also become bloated and full of decay gases, and they usually have like intestines spilling out from their armor.
They're perfect.
Yeah, they often have flies buzzing around them. Their skin is full of boils and blisters that variously pop and spurt out bits of pus. Wonderful. Basically, the grossest disease stuff that you can imagine, that's them. That's what they do.
Yeah.
But they're very happy about it. And in fact, they encourage everyone to embrace Grandfather Nurgle. Because Grandfather Nurgle loves you and wants to bless you with his wondrous diseases.
Yeah.
He wants you to be able to host the new life of flies and maggots and cockroaches and worms that he's going to birth into the world through your flesh. Yeah. What's not to like about this?
I don't know. Sounds perfect to me.
And so they're also smelly. And so most other Chaos Space Marines, not big fans of working with the Death Guard, unless they have to. Which, to be fair, they're very effective, and they're also one of the most united of the Traitor Legions. They still can actually manage to muster up mostly Legion strength in a coordinated manner. And actually, they started invading the Imperium and in more recent times in the setting, and basically got as far as the solar system.
It's pretty impressive, actually.
Pretty good, yeah. And that was because like they united under Mortarion, their Primarch. So yeah, that is basically the Death Guard. Then we come to the 15th Legion, the Thousand Sons, under the Primarch Magnus the Red, who were apparently also known as the Thousand Sons beforehand, which is a little weird. But they are the most psychically gifted Legion, which is both a blessing and a curse in various ways. So Magnus the Red ends up on a planet called Prospero, which is an Egyptian-themed planet of sorcerers, and people who know all sorts of esoteric lore about the warp and whatnot. And so he becomes the most proficient sorcerer on Prospero. At the same time, his legion, the Thousand Sons, were nearly decommissioned, not because of any horrible deeds they did, but because, like the Blood Angels, they were incredibly unstable in terms of their gene seed and had a very low acceptance rate of their gene seed among new recruits. But it was worse than Blood Angels. They were by far the least stable gene seed of any legion. Basically, it was getting to the point where pretty much anyone who was implanted with a Thousand Suns gene seed would, in short order, just turn into a quivering mass of like fleshy tumors.
Ah.
And this was called the flesh change. And it was just becoming rampant. It was at the point where like it was hard to get a space marine of the Thousand Suns to even get to a combat before the flesh change took over. And
Ah.
so Magnus the Red was found just in time for his genetic material to stabilize this gene seed,
Oh,
which
damn.
largely tamped down on the flesh change. It didn't quite get rid of it. It still happened every once in a while. But also, his gene seed enhanced any psychic abilities that anyone who was implanted with it had. So he had some of the best psychics, or as they were termed in the Space Marine Legions, librarians of all the
Ah.
Space Marine Legions. However, as time goes on, a lot of the legions and even a lot of the Imperial bureaucracy become pretty suspicious of all these warp powers because they are, in fact, conduits to various warp entities, which would later be called demons, but at the time were just called like warp xenos or whatever, because the Emperor was still pretending that gods didn't exist because he was doing, like r/atheism bullshit.
Right.
Right. Yeah. So they have this council at a place called Nicaea, which is, yes, just the Council of Nicaea. Don't worry about it.
Right.
And, right. So what happens at this council is the Emperor decides that going forward, all librarious departments in all the legions are going to disband. The librarians are no longer allowed to use their psychic powers, nor are any Primarchs allowed to use any psychic powers. And we're just going to ignore the fact that a bunch of them do it passively, like Conrad Kurz anyway. So, like,
No,
whatever, who cares?
yeah.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Now,
It's fine.
a number of Primarchs actually defended Magnus, including, weirdly enough, Leman Russ, who would later go on to try to genocide the Thousand Sons and kill Magnus the Red in particular, and who never got along with Magnus the Red. Because Magnus the Red was always doing shit like reading books, whereas Leman Russ was like, let's go drinking with the boys and then, punch some faces in afterwards. And Magnus the Red is like, you see, if you look here at the 3rd chapter of this book that I'm reading, you will find that, in fact, warp energies can be channeled in this way. And Leman Russ is like, fucking nerd.
Fucking nerd.
But also, Leman Russ is like, no, this isn't fair. Like, the psychic librarians, they've been fighting alongside us honorably.
Right.
Their powers have been invaluable. This. And yeah, this is bad. So it was a bit of a surprise that Leman Russ was sticking up for Magnus. And a bunch of other ones did. He was a relatively popular Primarch because, well, he wasn't a dick to anyone, really.
Well, yeah.
Unlike a lot of the other Primarchs. So, yeah, there was a lot of, backing for him. But ultimately, the Emperor decided against him and forbade him. So, Magnus went away and sulked on Prospero for, like, a real long time.
A lot of these guys seem like they like sulking.
They do. They're all... There's a lot of melodrama that happens with the Primarchs. So he's sulking on...
I like melodrama.
Yeah. He's sulking on Prospero. And he gets a psychic vision that Erebus, the first chaplain of the Wordbearers, has somehow managed to get Horus into the warp and is tempting him to fall to chaos. And Magnus, knowing more about that than basically anyone in the Imperium except the Emperor, is like, oh, that seems bad. So he psychically projects himself into the warp to try to stop Horus from falling to chaos. And it does not work. So then he decides to try to psychically contact the Emperor on Earth to be like, hey, Horus is turning against you, the War Master. Well, what actually happens is this psychic message is not actually received and understood by the Emperor. Instead, all it does is it breaks the Emperor's concentration of keeping the demons out of the Imperial Webway project on Earth. Oops. And so now Earth has to deal with a gigantic demon incursion.
Good.
All because Magnus decided to break the Edicts of Nicaea. So that's when the Emperor's like, okay, Leman Russ, go get Magnus, bring him to me. Which, as we already talked about, Horus intercepts that orders and changes it to go kill Magnus.
Right.
So the much more numerous Space Wolves show up on Prospero and start just wrecking shit for the Thousand Sons.
As you do.
Right. The Thousand Sons, who, by the way, at this point, are loyal to the Emperor and were trying to warn the Emperor. That was the whole point.
Yes.
doesn't matter. The Space Wolves are there, and they are not listening to any entreaties about how they're actually the Thousand Sons are loyal and whatnot. Nope, they're there to kill 1,000 Sons. That's what they're going to do.
Yep.
So eventually, the Thousand Sons realize that they cannot win this fight. So they decide to. Well, they don't actually have a way out because they're blockaded. But Tzeentch, the chaos god of change and sorcery and revolution,
right,
shows up, and he's also the god of magic and sorcery. Shows up and he's like, "Hey, I will help you escape if you pledge you and your entire legion to my service." There, Magnus the Red. And so Magnus is like, well, I don't have a whole lot of choice, so okay, I guess.
Okay, I guess.
And so, yeah, that's how they become the Tzeentch worshippers. And they, once again, start using their psychic powers in battle, because why not? You're now worshippers of the god of sorcery. You might as well.
You might as well.
So they end up fighting on the side of Horus in the heresy. They also end up changing their armor from a crimson red to a bright blue with yellow accents. They have a sort of Egyptian theming to a lot of their miniatures, although it's not as heavy as the Egyptian theming of, say, the Necrons.
Right.
And after the heresy, the biggest change that happens is one of their chief sorcerers, a man named Azek Ahriman, who, yes, it's also a very on-the-nose name if you know anything about Zoroastrianism. That's just how it is.
Yeah.
He decides that he's going to once and for all end the flesh change. Because now that they're worshipping Tzeentch and living, like, you know, in the Eye of Terror, the flesh change is back big time because of the mutating influences of the warp.
I mean, that sounds like
so he's like, you know what? I'm going to end it. So he decides he's going to research and cast one of the most powerful spells that he has ever cast, called the Rubric of Ahriman. And it's going to completely and permanently end the flesh change. And it does. But it does this by turning every single non-psychically gifted Thousand Sons Space Marine into a pile of ash sealed inside their armor.
Yikes.
Which are now animated by those guys' ghosts. So
fucking
actually,
yikes,
if you watch Space Marine 2, or you play Space Marine 2, when you kill the Thousand Sons Space Marines, most of them don't have any blood animations. Instead, this like purpley, pinkish dust swirls around when you kill them. That's because there's no one in that armor.
Well,
but if you notice, when you kill the lesser sorcerers, there is blood, and that's because there's actually a guy in there, because it only did that to the non-psychically gifted members of the Thousand Sons.
That's a nice feature.
Yeah. So, like, they paid attention to that in this game that you're watching some gameplay of. Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
So, the Thousand Sons now live on what's called the Planet of Sorcerers, and their big thing is seeking out like occult lore and magical spells and summoning rituals for demons and things like that. They are not as, you know, still a coherent force as, say, the Iron Warriors or the Death Guard, but still Magnus the Red is still active. He's one of the Primarchs you can actually get a model for as a demon Primarch. He has since sprouted like rainbow-colored wings since becoming a demon Primarch, and his fingers now grow claws, and he's got like bird talon feet. But otherwise, he's actually not that much different to how he was beforehand, which was just to say he had one eye that he lost, and he had red skin, and he still has that.
Yeah, I mean, fair enough.
Yeah. So, that's basically the Thousand Sons and Magnus the Red. So then we come to the... the Luna Wolves, or the Sons of Horus, or the Black Legion, because they've had a lot of changes. So this is the Legion of Horus Lupercal. They are the 16th Legion. And so they start out as the Luna Wolves, because why have one wolf-themed chapter when you can have two wolf-themed chapters?
Oh, I see.
Yeah. And so the Luna Wolves had white armor with it. I think it's black trim, but double check me on that. And their chapter or legion symbol is a wolf howling against a crescent moon. And they are,
subtle.
In a lot of ways, they're kind of similar to the Ultramarines. And this is because they become the Black Legion, who are the poster boys for Chaos, right? So you get the most generic Chaos Legion and the most generic Space Marine Loyalist Legion as the two sort of like poster boys for the game, right?
Right.
So they're not particularly great at anything, but they're not bad at anything either. And Horus is seen as both a great diplomat and a great general, even if he's perhaps not as good at like logistics and statescraft as Robute Gilliman. And so when the Emperor leaves the Great Crusade to go work on his Imperial Webblade project, Horus is the one who's put in charge, which you can see a lot more about on the previous video.
Right.
So when this happens, though, the Emperor encourages Horus to change the name of his legion to the Sons of Horus. And at first, Horus is like, I don't know. But some of his brothers are like, no, dude, you should totally do it. You deserve it. Go for it. So
You've
eventually he's
earned
like, all right, fine. They're the Sons of Horus now. So they go to a seafoam green armor color. And instead of the wolf icon, they go to a symbol called the Eye of Horus, but it does not look much like the Eye of Horus that you might be familiar with from Egypt. It is an eye seen from straight on rather than from the side. And there is an arrow that goes behind it pointing down.
That's funny.
So
yeah,
that is the symbol of the Sons of Horus. Now, we've already done a lot of stuff about Horus in the previous video, so I'm not going to go into all of it. But, he's the one who ultimately leads the Horus heresy, which is why it's called that.
Right.
And he is, in fact, killed by... his home planet is Chthoniya, and we don't hear a whole lot about it. So, sorry. But yeah, he is the one who is the leader of the heresy, and eventually the Emperor kills him, utterly destroying him body and soul in his final act before being entombed on the Golden Throne. And so at that point, the Legion largely scatters, but one guy, Ezekiel Abaddon, becomes sort of like the successor to Horus, and he declares himself the War Master of Chaos, grabs some of Horus's gear, like his lightning claw and his sword, and is like, these are mine now. I'm going to be in charge of the rebellion against the Imperium. That's me.
Oh, yes.
And he reforms the Sons of Horus into the Black Legion. And in part, he says that because he's doing that because like Horus failed. So we're not going to use his name or his heraldry anymore. We are now the Black Legion. And any Chaos Space Marine, any Marines who are against the Imperium and are willing to work with, the powers of chaos, you can join the Black Legion, even if you already belong to another legion. So the Black Legion actually contains Marines from basically all other legions, as well as later renegade Space Marines from later on after the Horus Heresy who turned to chaos, because that's a thing that happens every once in a while. So the Black Legion is a big mixed band of all sorts of craziness. And as the Black Legion, their armor colors are black with gold trim, and Chaos Space Marines have a lot of trim. So if you want to paint Chaos Space Marines, get ready for painting trim. All the armor panels have lots of trim. So yeah, get used to it. And like I said, they are sort of the most generic of the Chaos Space Marine legions because they are the direct counterpart to the Ultramarines in terms of being the poster children for the faction. So when you look at box art for...
Right.
So whenever you buy a box of models, right, the front of the box is going to have a painted squad of, or a painted example of whatever the model is. And unless it's a model for a specific subfaction, like this is Huron Blackheart of the Red Corsairs, and we're painting him red on the box because he's a Red Corsair, that model is going to be painted in the color scheme of the poster subfaction for that faction. For the Space Marines, it's the Ultramarines. For the Imperial Guard, it's the Cadians. For the Eldar, I believe it's usually Ulthwé. For the Chaos Space Marines, it is the Black Legion. So if you pick up a generic Chaos Space Marine kit, the front of the box is going to show you the Black Legion. Now, if you turn the box over, usually they'll show you a few different color schemes with a very rudimentary and inaccurate painting guide for them. Don't trust that painting guide, everyone. They tell you, oh, it only takes these 5 paints. It doesn't. They use dozens of paints on that model. Don't trust them. They're lying.
They're liars.
Yeah, I've tried. I was like, I wonder if it's actually possible to recreate this color scheme with just these paints. And the answer is no. No, it's not.
Absolutely fucking not.
No. But anyway, yeah. So as a result, they are basically the Space Marines, the Chaos Space Marines, who can call on any other Chaos Space Marines. And that gives them a lot of flexibility on the tabletop, but it also means that they kind of have a lack of flavor in terms of the lore.
Right.
I actually personally think the Red Corsairs are a more interesting generic Chaos Space Marine faction because they have a lot more interesting, more recent history, and they're also the only Chaos Space Marine faction that's large enough that they could reasonably challenge the Black Legion, just in terms of raw military power.
Right.
But Games Workshop disagrees with me, so the Black Legion it is. Let's see.
Yeah.
Then we come to the 17th Legion, the Word Bearers, with their primarch Lorgar Aurelian of Colchis. Before that, they were called the Imperial Heralds. And Lorgar shows up on Colchis, which is a planet that is dominated by the sort of... it's the worship of the Chaos Gods, but generally under their more respectable aspects, right? So the people who are devoted to Khorne aren't devoted to the aspects of just unrelenting slaughter. They're interested in things like the martial prowess and honorable combat aspects of Khorne.
Right.
The ones who are worshipping Slaanesh aren't there for the crazy, questionably consensual sex nonsense. They're there for like the perfection of their artistic crafts, right? They want to be the best potter or painter or sculptor or whatever. And so they worship the Colchisian version of Slaanesh. So, like the funerary rites are presided over by priests of Nurgle and talking about like, the renewal of new life after death and things, and not so much about the everyone should get a disease.
Right.
But also, all of this worship is still empowering the Chaos Gods, and ultimately the Chaos Gods would love to turn that into a full-blown crazy chaos nonsense demon world.
Yeah.
So Lorgar shows up, and Lorgar has all these visions about a godlike being clad in gold descending from the sky to have Lorgar become one of his great servants and to go on and unite the galaxy. And so Lorgar decides, well, that's actually a vision of the real god. And so I am going to convert all of Colchis to the worship of the god that I see in my visions. And so he leads a holy war to end the chaos worship, which he doesn't have that term, so he doesn't conceptualize it that way, but that's what's going on.
Right.
So he largely ends, at least officially, all this chaos worship with the old religion of Colchis. It obviously continues on underground because that's not how religions work, that you can just kill some people and then that religion ends.
Right.
It doesn't ever work that way.
Never works like that.
Right. So, but he does in fact officially convert the Colchis to the worship of whatever coming god he has in his visions. And then, wouldn't you know it, the Emperor, clad in gold, comes in on a spaceship and is like, Lorgar, you are my long-lost son. Would you like to help me reunite all of the lost strands of humanity in my great crusade?
Who's their mom at this point?
That actually there is an answer to that. I don't want to super get into it because it's...
Okay, we won't talk about it right now. Go on.
It's recent, but the woman who is supposed to be their mom.
Oh, okay.
And Lorgar's like, this is exactly what I was telling all of you about. I was right.
Called it, he says.
Yep. Now, there's a little bit of a wrinkle in this, though, which is that the Emperor is trying to force everyone... Yeah, the Emperor is trying to get everyone to be like an r/atheism bro. And here's Lorgar, who's like, the Emperor is in fact the God Emperor of mankind. He's the one true God of humanity. We should all worship him. And so whenever anyone's like, okay, but Lorgar, he said that he's definitely not a god. Like, that's one of his big things. So Lorgar's like, only the truly divine would defy their own divinity. Or deny their own divinity, sorry.
Yeah, sure.
I was like, well, that's convenient.
Jan. Yeah.
Okay. But, so he goes off and his legion starts conquering worlds and converting them to the worship of the God Emperor. And they do tend to be some of the most loyal worlds in the Imperium, but there's a problem, which is that whenever they conquer a world, they stick around for, in some cases, decades trying to enforce this ideology on the planet until it's sincerely believed, which they're usually pretty successful at. But that also means that they're super slow at it. And so at one point, the Emperor sends some people to investigate. Like, why are the word bearers so damn slow? What is going on? Like, other legions are 4 or 5 times faster at bringing worlds into compliance.
Right.
And so word comes back that, like, oh, it's because they're staying around to make sure that everyone converts to a new religion of worshiping the Emperor.
And the Emperor's like, stop.
He's like, it's like the one thing I told you definitely don't ever do. What
God
the hell?
damn it. You had one job.
What, seriously, one job, and it was to make sure people don't worship me, and this is the opposite of what's happening.
Right.
So, the Emperor ends up calling the entire Word Bearers Legion to a particular planet that was like their crowning jewel, their example of what their ideal compliant world was like. And
Right.
they have the entire Legion stand outside of the capital city of that planet, Monarchia, which they considered to be their ideal perfect city, full of temples to the Emperor and full of wonderful, loyal worshippers of the God Emperor. And they
As you
don't know
do.
this, but a few days before they get there, the Ultramarines had showed up with the second in command of the Empire, or the Imperium, Malkador the Sigillite, and they were like, "Hey, everyone in Monarchia, you should get out. You have 3 days, and if you're still here, you're going to die."
Ah, well, you know.
So the word bearers show up, and the thing that happens when they get there is like, "Oh, Monarchia is now just a smoldering crater, and it was the Ultramarines who did it."
Uh,
And the Emperor shows up and forces all of them against their will to kneel, while he basically just chews them out for a good long while about how
Gives
they're
them a
complete
lecture.
failures. Yeah, he's like, "You have failed at basically the entire point of the Great Crusade. This has been completely unacceptable. Every world that you brought into compliance now needs to go be fixed because of your actions. And you need to get better at this, or there's going to be problems." And so basically, he just came in and said all of them, "Hey, your entire lives have been wrong,
Yeah.
and it's your fault."
And it's your fault.
Right. So, unsurprisingly, Lorgar doesn't take this too
It's
well.
a little bit upset. He worked so hard.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So, on the surface, this actually seems to go pretty well. The word bearers launch new crusade fleets, and they become some of the fastest conquering crusade fleets. They are bringing planets into compliance at a rate that is hard to match for even the biggest of the other legions. But during this time, Lorgar is
But.
on a quest to see, well, if I can't worship the Emperor, are there gods out there who actually are worth my worship and will appreciate it? It turns
Ooh.
out the answer is yes. The Chaos gods are very happy to accept your worship, Lorgar.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
They're
Absolutely.
all about that. And when you pray to them, they will answer, and they will, with some costs,
You
give you what you're
know.
looking for.
Yeah.
Right. So Lorgar secretly becomes the first of the Primarchs to become worshippers of chaos, because that was his whole thing. His whole thing was needing to have something to have faith in that was bigger than him, and needing to be something part of something bigger.
And
Because
he
he
wanted to be
and
appreciated for it.
well, yeah, that too, and he was. So that's why Erebus, the first chaplain of the Word Bearers, is sent out to corrupt Horus to chaos,
Right.
because it's all. And also, Erebus is the reason, because Erebus was actually one of those secret chaos worshippers the whole time,
Oh, of course.
and he's the one who was whispering in Lorgar's ear, getting him to turn towards finding out about the chaos gods after the Emperor had rebuked Lorgar, which is
Right.
why Erebus is widely considered the everyone's most hated character in the entire franchise.
What a dick.
Basically, yeah. So yeah, no one likes Erebus, and
Good job
so
being the
Lorgar's
whole problem, asshole.
right. So as Lorgar's going around on this quest to see who the real gods of the universe or the galaxy are, he's discovering things like, oh hey, all these other planets have religions that were very similar to the religion on Colchis before I destroyed that,
Yep.
and like finding all these links. And eventually he shows up on a planet called Cadia, which is in fact the planet that is known for the Cadian Imperial Guard, which is the
Right.
poster children for the Imperial Guard, which
Yep.
are also where all the Imperial Guard that you're seeing on screen, they're Cadians. But at this time, they're not part of the Imperium, and they are the world that is probably the closest to the Eye of Terror, and they actually are the world that is, unbeknownst to the Imperium, but that is holding back the Eye of Terror from expanding. And when Lorgar finds them, they're a bunch of chaos worshipping cultists. And so,
As you do.
right. So he is there for some ritual where this chaos priestess is going to make a bunch of like sacrifices and then like have various chaos runes painted on her naked body, and then her body explodes into a shower of bone shards and meat, and out of its
And,
place comes her ascended demonic form.
yes.
And that demonic form leads Lorgar into the Eye of Terror so that he can experience, the power of the gods firsthand. And when all that's said and done, yeah, he's a diehard chaos worshiper. So before the heresy, the word bearers have a sort of slate gray color armor and some gold trim, and they usually etched sacred runes and whatnot into their armor. And they keep up with the etching of runes into their armor after the heresy, but they turn it into a deep crimson, which was originally the color of a specialist unit called the Gal Vorbak, who were word bearers who had basically let themselves become possessed by demons in order to enhance their combat prowess. And that became just the standard coloration for the Legion as a whole. And so they do not end up worshiping any particular chaos god more than the others. In fact, they're very careful to try to keep a nice balance. But they are also the most religiously fanatical followers of the chaos gods. And they go around actually trying to get other people to convert to worshiping the chaos gods. So when they go and attack a planet, it's not just to grab all the resources. It's to try to get the population to become worshippers of chaos, to enhance the power of the chaos gods. And they also are the sponsors of many chaos cults on many different planets in the Imperium. So they might not be able to physically go conquer it, but they can feed resources and strategies and stuff to chaos cultists that they have, implanted on the planet.
Right.
So that's one of their big things. Right. Lorgar is also a demon Primarch. Basically, all the Chaos Space Marine Primarchs that survive become demon Primarchs. That's just how it is.
Oh.
Yeah. So the word bearers are also the reason that the Ultramarines largely get excluded from participating most of the Horus Heresy. So we talked about how they cut off Ultramar from the rest of the Imperium.
Yep.
So this happens as a result of what's called the betrayal at Calth. So this is before Horus has openly revealed that he's a traitor.
Right.
And so he says to the Ultramarines, hey, I'm going to have you and the word bearers team up on a new crusade fleet because we need to heal the bad blood between you two. Because, you're still disdainful of the word bearers for their, trying to get people to worship the Emperor, and they still resent you for being the ones who destroyed Monarchia. So you guys are going to meet up. Unbeknownst to the Ultramarines, what's actually happening is an invasion of word bearers is being sent to a planet in Ultramar called Calth to set up a gigantic world-sized chaos ritual to create the warp storms that are going to cut off the Ultramarines, and also to kill as many Ultramarines in an ambush as possible. So the Ultramarines show up at Calth, which is supposed to be the muster point for this joint expedition, and they start getting fired on. And at first, the Ultramarines are like, no, these are clearly inaccurate reports. Something else is happening. The word bearers are not shooting at us. Except, the word bearers are definitely shooting at you. So for a little while, they don't even respond because they figure there must be some kind of mistake. And so as a result, a large part of their fleets are destroyed. And the planet Calth itself, which was considered to be sort of like a jewel of a world, lots of plant life and nature and very beautiful place. Yeah, it gets turned into an airless, lifeless rock at the end of this.
Unfortunate.
Yeah, and lots of cultists are basically released onto the planet to go do various, horrible chaos rituals with human sacrifices and whatnot to summon a warp storm as well as a demonic incursion.
Right.
And so after they manage to successfully complete this, cut off Ultramar from the warp, they just get out of there because they have the gods of the warp behind them. So they don't care about the warp storm. They can get out of there anyway because the gods are literally going to guide them.
OD5000, yeah.
Right. And that's what ends up meaning that the Ultramarines are largely cut off from the rest of the Imperium for most of the Horus Heresy, which is why they end up being the majority Space Marine force by the end of it. So,
that makes sense.
I think that's it for the word bearers. We'll go on to the Salamanders, which I'm actually playing as in the footage that you're seeing on screen right now.
Very nice.
So the Salamanders are the 18th Legion. Their Primarch is a Vulcan, and their homeworld is Nocturne. And, hey, what themes do you think Vulcan has as far as being a Primarch?
Elves.
No.
What?
You got to think of the Roman god, Vulcan, which means, volcanoes, fires, forges,
And they're
stuff like that.
salamanders. Yeah.
Yeah, and they're salamanders, right? So the
Mm-hmm.
salamanders chapter of Legion is named after the salamanders, which are creatures that live on Nocturne. They're large reptilian dragon-like creatures.
Sometimes the
It is
simplest
considered,
is the best option. It's good to be just be
yeah,
straightforward.
and they're a fairly on the nose chapter, just like the Iron Hands are very very on the nose. So they're also one of the chapters that was held back from deployment for a very long time, and they were one of three legions like that. And it's not entirely clear why, although I have a sneaking suspicion as to why, and it has to do
Yeah.
with a certain. It has to do with what Vulcan's actual superpower is, because his superpower is doesn't die.
Ah, yes.
Actually, it's if die come back.
Oh,
He has the infinite life cheat on.
I see.
Vulcan has been thrown into a star and come back. He was
Nice.
atomized, turned into dust in the heart of a star, and then he just reformed.
That's
So
pretty
yeah,
cool.
because Vulcan is what's called a perpetual. So there's a small number of perpetuals in the setting. The Emperor is one. John Grammaticus is another. Vulcan, obviously. There's also the Primarch's quote unquote mother is another one of the perpetuals. So there's a small number of these, and they go around the galaxy doing stuff as immortals. And Vulcan is one of them. And that's revealed when he is eventually captured and tortured to death numerous times by Conrad Kurz, who doesn't originally realize that he's a perpetual. So he thinks he's just killed Vulcan, but then Vulcan, just kind of respawns. And
Oh,
he's like, wait, what? God damn it.
wait a minute. You're not
Yeah,
supposed to do that.
right. So
Hmm.
Vulcan is generally portrayed as the physically largest of the Primarchs. So most of them stand 9 or 10 feet tall, but this guy is like the tallest of the other Primarchs that come up to his
Huge.
shoulders. Yeah, he's
Huge.
real big. Nocturne itself is a volcanic world that is also a relatively high amounts of solar radiation coming in. And as a result, Vulcan and all the people on Nocturne tend to have fairly dark skin, and to the point that the people implanted with his gene seed, there's a one of the organs is called the Bellin chroma or something like that. Anyway, it basically says, "Hey, melanocytes, you work super extra efficiently when there's lots of radiation coming in," which basically means Space Marines can get and lose a tan very very fast to prevent things like skin cancer.
Oh,
Right. But it's in overdrive with Vulcan's gene seed. So the minute you're exposed to any radiation at all, if you have Vulcan's gene seed, all of your melanocytes are just on full blast all the time.
oh,
So yeah, and also your eyes turn red, which makes you some of the scariest looking Space Marines.
that does seem pretty scary.
Yeah. But also, the Salamanders have the reputation for being the least scary Space Marine if you're just a regular old dude who's on their side.
Right.
Because whereas like the Iron Hands care about the survival of humanity as a whole, and so do the Salamanders also care about individual human lives, as long
Oh,
as
that's
they're loyal.
nice.
Right.
Oh, well, yeah, I mean, there's got
So
to be a catch.
right. So there was a point where a this Salamanders in another chapter. This is after the Horus Heresy, in like very recent times in terms of the timeline. Were on a campaign against orcs, and that other chapter decided that they were going to use a refugee camp as bait for the orcs and let the orcs get in to that refugee camp and start killing a bunch of people. And then they bombed the shit out of the refugee camp themselves, killing all the humans and orcs. And so their captain and the Salamanders captain met after that, and the Salamanders captain was like, "You're never going to do that again." And so this guy's like, "What if I do?"
But
So
what if I did, though?
the Salamander captain just beats the shit out of him.
Yeah.
He's like, "That's what happens if you do it again. Except I won't stop."
Right.
Yeah, because
That makes
like
sense to me.
yeah, um, so yeah, there is. So there, Vulcan has also had his own fair share of war crimes. So Nocturne was a world that was used as a raiding location by the Drukhari, the Dark Eldar. So as a quick recap, the Eldar have their souls sucked away by Slanesh, But the Dark Eldar have found that they can slow that or restore their souls if they are able to experience suffering from others. And so they are like biologically required to be sadists.
Oh, well, you know.
Yeah. So they were raiding Nocturne pretty frequently. And the people of Nocturne would run and hide whenever they would come to avoid this. But Vulcan decides to unite the various factions on Nocturne and turn the tides on the Dark Eldar. And so eventually they actually managed to get the Dark Eldar to run away so hard that they just kind of stopped showing up.
Oh, okay, yeah, fair.
Early on in his career, this set up Vulcan to really, really, really resent the Eldar. And generally speaking, Imperials, including the Primarchs, don't make a lot of distinctions between the Eldar factions. So, like, Eldar Harlequins, Craftworld Eldar, Eldar Corsairs, Dark Eldar, Exodites, they're all just Eldar. So, after this is a while after, but at one point he's doing this compliance on a world where humans and Eldar have been living together, which is not okay according to the Imperium.
Okay.
And yeah, he burns a little Eldar child to death.
Sounds like a dick
move. Yeah, well then, after thinking about that, he realizes, oh...
No, that was kind of a dick move.
that was horrible. I should definitely not have done that. And so that is one of the reasons why he ends up being one of the nicer Primarchs, is because he realizes, I have the capacity for extreme amounts of horrible shit, and I need to not do that.
Oh, so I am the problem.
Right. He becomes very conscientious that he could be the problem if he lets himself. So that's one of the reasons why he decides not to. But that's something that happens after he's reunited with the Salamanders. So one of the first things that happens with the Salamanders is one of their first deployments is actually during the unification. And they are sent in to clear out an underground group that are, they think, are actually just going to be a bunch of humans that are resisting, the Emperor's rule on Earth.
Yep.
Turns out, no, it's actually one of the last remaining forces of Men of Iron from, the Age of Strife, the AI group that nearly wiped out humanity before the Emperor. Okay, yeah. And so they get largely annihilated, but they come out of it. And they're successful, where most legions probably wouldn't have been. They're reduced in numbers, but they're still around.
Yeah.
And so they are used. Yeah, they're sort of used as a reserve force for a while after that, and they never really become super numerous afterwards. Which is also one of the reasons why officially during the when the chapters are all split up, they don't actually get any second founding chapters. They're already at 1,000 Marines by the end of the heresy. So just all right, well, you're just the Salamanders, I guess.
Oh,
but yeah. So what ends up happening when the Emperor shows up is he shows up after Vulcan has thrown off the oppression of the Dark Eldar, which I don't know. Maybe he should have done that with a few other Primarchs. Maybe. Maybe. But anyway, he realizes, well, I can't just help with this military conflict because Vulcan has it under control. And he shows up during a celebration for this throwing off of the Drukhari. So he shows up in disguise. And he's like, all right, let's have a contest. Me and you, Vulcan. And Vulcan is like, well, I don't know who the stranger is, but there's something clearly important about him, and there's some connection between us. So okay. So Vulcan says, all right, we'll hunt salamanders. Whoever kills the biggest salamander will serve the other one. And so they both go, and Vulcan manages to kill the biggest salamander ever seen. But the Emperor is actually failing at this task. Now, it's strongly suspected that he knew that all this was going to go down this way and let himself fail. But the Emperor is in actual mortal peril. He's in trouble. So Vulcan decides to ditch the competition and go save the Emperor.
Oh.
At which point the Emperor reveals who he is. And Vulcan's like, you know what? I'll serve you anyway, even though I technically won the contest, Dad.
Technically.
Yep, technically. So, yeah, Vulcan joins, and he is one of those integrations with his Legion that goes pretty well. There's no big conflicts. So apparently before this, they were off before the reunification. The Salamanders were called the Dust Clan, and all these names are all nicknames. They were officially just the 18th Legion.
Right.
But after this, he changes the iconography to have the salamander, a head of a salamander in profile as the chapter badge
Oh,
or well,
funny.
Legion
Yeah.
badge at this time.
Yeah.
Um, and he also creates this culture where everyone is responsible not just for the upkeep, but for the improvement and in some cases the creation of their war gear. So the Salamanders have a reputation for having excellently crafted armor, weapons, and vehicles because they largely made it themselves and they're all trained to be expert artisans. And
Oh, I see.
so, like, if there's not currently, if you're a salamander and you're not currently involved in a conflict, you're probably doing one of two things. One is visiting your families, because unlike basically every other group of Space Marines in the entire Imperium, they're encouraged to maintain strong ties with their biological families, including their
Right.
siblings, nieces, nephews, parents, all that stuff. And they largely become like fixtures in the families that they come from. And so they'll be around for generations. So they'll be hanging out and forming, like having parties with their, great great grand nephews and nieces and whatnot. So they'll be doing that, or they'll be at a forge making a new Warhammer or a new Flamer or a new power sword or whatever. Yeah. Now, they, like I said, were never super numerous, and they also
Right.
lost a fair few Marines during the Drop Site Massacre. So for most of the Horus Heresy, they are largely out of the fight, not because of any inability to get where they were going, but just because there just aren't that many of them to go fight in the first place.
Right.
But during that time, Conrad Kurz, the Night Haunter, manages to capture Vulcan and decides to
Meanwhile.
start torturing him over and over and over again, which is how we find out that Vulcan is a perpetual in the first place.
Right.
And at one point, after lots of different tortures and all sorts of horrible shit, because Conrad Kurz is a very bad person, even though he doesn't think of himself that way, he is.
Yeah.
So yeah, after a lot of that, one of his final things he's going to do is he's like, he left out Vulcan's master crafted Warhammer so that Vulcan could find it. So Vulcan tries to use the inbuilt teleporter to teleport to someplace else. And Conrad is like, haha, I disabled the teleport function.
That
And
joke's
then
on
Vulcan
you.
says, but you've forgotten one thing, brother. And Conrad's all like, what's that? He says, it's also a hammer, and proceeds to beat the shit out of Conrad Curse.
Surprise! The secret under the mountain was a nuke.
It's like, you handed me a Warhammer, dude.
Oops.
Yeah. So Vulcan actually ends up hanging around in the Imperium for quite a while, and he actually shows up for some important battles well after the Scouring, which is when the Space Marines and the other Imperial forces chase the Chaos Space Marines back into like the Eye of Terror and the Maelstrom.
Right.
But at some point, he disappears, saying that he'll return after his sons can find like his 9 relics, and he basically sets them like a D&D quest.
Yeah.
And so now the Salamanders,
Yeah.
the Salamanders are now looking for the 9 relics of Vulcan, and they think that if they can reunite them, Vulcan will come back. And given that he's a perpetual, he's definitely still out there. So like, that's probably true. They probably will get him back. So yeah, that's basically the Salamanders. So then we get to the Raven Guard under their Primarch Corvus Corax, which is just the scientific name for Raven.
Right.
Because again, we don't get subtlety.
There's no such thing as subtlety in
Right.
Bossing Say.
Their home world is Deliverance, and this is another one of those legions where like we don't get a whole lot of background on the home world or the legion.
Yeah.
We do know that one of the reasons why they don't have a huge number of successors is because basically the Iron Warriors fucked with one of their experiments. Or no, it was the Alpha Legion, sorry, the Alpha Legion, which is the next Legion and the final Legion we're going to talk about. So, they were never hugely popular. They were one of those legions that had problems with like acceptance of the gene seed and new recruits.
Right.
And their big tactic is stealth, which seems weird for a group of 8 to 9 foot tall super soldiers in heavy armor.
Right.
But they're actually pretty decent at it, as far as you can be. And so they're known for having lots of snipers. Their armor is almost entirely black, except for their white Legion symbol, which is a raven, obviously. Right. They like the like the Night Lords and the Salamanders, undergo pretty significant changes when they have their gene seed implanted. They, much like the Night Lords, become pale, edgy goths, basically, when they become Space Marines.
Naturally.
They also suffer from a gene flaw called the Sable Brand, which basically is that they occasionally just get really, really depressed. And, they're like, oh, nothing matters. It's all just bullshit. For just, a little while. And then they get over it.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, have you tried just not being sad? And they're like, oh, okay, yeah, let's do that.
Yeah, we can. That's an option. We can just do that. Perfect.
Yeah.
Love that for me.
This, I don't know if Ashley is still here, but this is where we're going to talk about the space sharks, right? Because it seems like the Carrion Astra might be Raven Guard successors. Now, some people say they might actually be Night Lord successors because physically they would look about the same, and there are certain aspects of their willingness to use terror tactics that make them seem a little bit more like Night Lords, but there really are not any confirmed traitor successors in the Loyalist chapters. And some of the most likely traitor successors are actually from the most recent founding, the Ultima founding, and these guys are definitely not that. Also, they have weapons that have been taken from the Ashen Claws, which we know are Raven Guard successors, and they took them as if they owned them, and they were weapons that Corvus Corax had used, which makes me think that they probably know that they're Raven Guard successors. The Ashen Claws themselves are actually an interesting bit. Basically, they were a group of Raven Guard who didn't really have the favor of Corvus Corax. They were kind of all a bunch of dicks. And so Corvus Corax was like, all right.
As you do.
You guys are bad influences, so here's what we're going to do. You guys are going to form your own little chapter within the Legion called the Ashen Claws, and you are going to patrol the edges of the galaxy, right at the edge of the rim of the galaxy, for any extragalactic threats. And then he just kind of largely abandoned them there, and they have stayed there ever since as a not actually loyal but also not chaos-worshipping force of Space Marines who like to scavenge and just recruit when and where they can, and really don't like aliens, I suppose. But they're also not huge fans of the Imperium either. So, and yeah, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense that they've survived that long on their own. But basically, they're there as a plot device to help get the space sharks where having the stuff they're supposed to have and where they're supposed to be.
So they can be space sharks.
Yeah. So that's the Ashen Claws. There are some other descendant chapters, but I don't want to go into all of them. Sure. Let's see. They famously were... So during the Horus Heresy, all the legions, both loyal and traitor, started vastly accelerating the recruitment timeline because they were taking heavy losses and they needed to be able to get new Space Marines on the field fast. Right. So they were trying to come up with ways to go from new recruit to Space Marine in battle armor
as fast as possible.
As fast as possible. So Corvus Corax was running a series of experiments about this on Deliverance, and he had basically been getting a really good results. He had been able to really accelerate the process. So the Alpha Legion came in and screwed this all up and basically infected all of the gene seed that was in this project with a bunch of chaos warp nonsense, so that the Space Marines that resulted from this process, instead of turning into new stable Raven Guard Space Marines, just turned into chaos spawn monsters like you're seeing on screen.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So yeah, that didn't work out. And as a result, that also was a large portion of the Legion's gene seed, which is one of the reasons why they are not a terribly numerous Legion. It's because of all that nonsense. Which brings us to the Alpha Legion, which is one of the ones that you literally can't say that much about them, and yet they're also one of the more interesting of the Chaos Legions, because this is our final Legion and our final Chaos Legion. So the Alpha Legion has a Primarch named Alfarius, except it also has a Primarch named Omegon. And the reason for this is that, according to Alfarius and Omegon, they are twin brothers who share a single soul and were an anomaly in the Primarch project. And it's one of the reasons why if you answer how many Primarchs are there, the answer is 18, 19, 20, and 21 are all viable answers depending on how you look at it. Right. Because if you listen to Alpharius and Omegon, there's one Primarch of the Alpha Legion. It's Alpharius and Omegon. They're the same guy because they share a
Right.
soul. But they do have two
see.
separate bodies. And also, the existence of Omegon was largely kept secret even from the other legions and the other Primarchs. It's also said that Alpharius was actually not scattered and raised on Terra, but that his brother was scattered. But also, that could just be a lie, because that's basically their thing. Is basically everything about the Alpha Legion is just probably a lie.
I see.
Yeah. So they were officially the last legion to be made into a actual force on the field of battle in the Great Crusade. However, for a very long time, basically from the beginnings of the Great Crusade, there were reports of Astartes in various non-standard livery with colors not associated with any of the known legions, who would appear on battlefields, complete some particular objective on behalf of the Imperium, and then just disappear. Not necessarily like disappear like magic, but like just get out of there and not contact anyone.
Yeah,
no communications with them.
GTFO, yeah.
Right. They had a tendency to get rid of anyone who got in the way of their operations and never explain themselves. And so that was often called the Ghost Legion, because people were like, well, there's something going on. There's a group of Space Marines that are not officially acknowledged.
Right.
That are out there. And it's still never been officially acknowledged, but it seems very obvious that that was, in fact, early deployments of the Alpha Legion. We also don't know what planet, if any, Omegon or Alpharius might have been scattered to. We don't know what their life was like beforehand. In fact, the very fact that they're the 20th Legion call themselves the Alpha Legion seems like it might itself just be a joke, because they're the last legion named after the first letter of the alphabet.
Yeah.
Before the heresy, their symbol was a alpha inside of a capital Omega with a chain going across as the crossbar of the alpha that also reaches the either side of the Omega. And they also were big fans of Hydra imagery, because they thought of their legion as like a Hydra, where if you struck one of them down, 2 more Alpha Legionaries would show up. Also, Alpha Legionaries, at least with outsiders, consistently just identified all of themselves as being Alpharius. And Alpharius was also, by a large margin, the smallest of the Primarchs. He was, in fact, about the size of a standard Astartes, which meant that, it was, in fact, hard to tell. And sometimes there would be someone in Alpharius' armor, and Alpharius would actually be in just regular old standard battle plate from just, any generic dude.
Right.
And the idea was supposed to be that it didn't matter if you were actually talking to Alpharius or not. All of them were Alpharius, and all of them had, that was the Legion. They were all identical infiltrators.
Right.
They would change their appearance to not look like Alpharius when they went on infiltration runs, and sometimes they infiltrated other legions. They still do that. But naturally, they had perhaps the most uniform change when they became Space Marines. They all ended up looking a lot like Alpharius, to the point that they could pass for him with, like a little bit of cosmetics, whether surgical or just, regular old makeup.
That's fun.
Yeah. So their color scheme is, it varies in its portrayal. Sometimes it's a sort of seafoam green, similar to the Sons of Horus, but a lot of times it is sort of a iridescent color scheme, where it shifts between green and blue depending on the angle that you're viewing it from.
Mm-hmm.
And they also like to have little scale pattern details on a lot of their armor, especially post heresy.
Right.
But even pre-heresy, they still like to do a lot of that. And they are sort of the special ops. And also, their loyalty is questionable, and it might not actually be the same for every warband of Alpha Legion. So the Alpha Legion as a whole are considered to be a Chaos Space Marine warband, and they will include things like demon engines and Chaos cultists in their ranks and whatnot. However, they've also been known to show up and save Imperial worlds from Xenos, or show up and just test the defenses of an important strategic Imperial world and then leave after they figured out where the weak points are. And more importantly, after the Imperium has figured out where the weak points are.
Oh.
So it seems like some of them are renegade, but still ultimately loyal. And then some of them are just chaos worshipping Chaos Space Marines. And some of them might still be trying to do the whole, we're actually against the Imperium, but we don't like chaos all that much. And it's also often the case that any given warband will be under orders from a more powerful Alpha Legion Space Marine, who has motives different than the ones that he's portraying. Because again, it's all lies and subterfuge all the way down.
Right.
Now, Alfarius actually considered himself to be loyal, but he was approached by a secret society group, because of course, it's all going to be conspiracy and secret societies. And they were like, hey, look, here's the thing. Chaos is real, as you can obviously see, and they're going to win unless Horus takes over. Because if Horus wins, then it will have weakened both himself and the Imperium so much that the Chaos Gods can finally be defeated by an alliance of the alien races, and then the galaxy will be finally rid of chaos. So Alfarius' reason for joining Horus was because he thought that if he stayed loyal, then chaos would win ultimately. It seems like a dumb decision, but you know what? The Horus Heresy is not a history of smart decisions.
I've heard of worse decisions so far.
Yeah. Also, apparently, Omegon did not like this and wanted to be openly and actually no subterfuge loyal. And that brought them into conflict. Now, allegedly, Rogel Dorn killed Alfarius towards the end of the Scouring. And I say allegedly because how do you know that was Alfarius?
Right. You don't.
And also, we have no information on what happened to Omegon. So, like, maybe it was actually Omegon standing in for Alfarius. Maybe it was just another legionary, although the fact that he could stand toe-to-toe with Dorn for a while makes that unlikely.
Sure.
So, like, we don't actually know which or if there is a Primarch for the Alpha Legion still exists in existence. Because we can't say much about the Alpha Legion with any certainty.
Right.
So, yeah, that is all 18 of the 20 legions. So, in the modern setting, like I said, the legions have been broken up into chapters, and in terms of the Chaos Space Marines, most of the legions have fractured to the point that you can come up with your own warband of whatever legion you want and give them, a variant paint scheme or whatever, and say they're not part of the wider legion because there might not be a wider legion. And that's to give you a lot of freedom to do things like come up with your own homebrew warband or Space Marine chapter or whatever. And originally, the idea behind the two Lost Primarchs, 2 and 11, was supposed to be that you could use them for your own homebrew. You could make your own homebrew legion. People don't do that much anymore. They'll just say, like, oh, this chapter is an Ultramarine successor or whatever, right?
Right.
So, yeah. But that was the original intent. And some people do still do that. But, yeah. Now, I would say that this is all information that the average Imperial citizen does not know. Most Imperial citizens have never and will never see a Space Marine.
Right.
There's about one loyal Space Marine in the Imperium for every 10 planets in the Imperium that are inhabited by humans. So, Space Marines are outnumbered by standard humans by, trillions to one, basically.
A considerable amount.
Right. They're also not even the main military force of the Imperium, even though they're the poster children of the Imperial military and the franchise as a whole.
Of course.
By far, the Imperial Navy and the Imperial Guard are the biggest military forces in the Imperium by orders of magnitude. Right. Most wars in the Imperium will be fought by the Navy and the Guard with absolutely no involvement from a single Space Marine at any point. So, they are very rare. And there are, of course, even special boys among the Space Marines, like the Grey Knights and whatnot. But, yeah.
Special boys! We love us a special boy.
Right. But, the fiction, the franchise, focuses heavily on the Space Marines because, let's face it, they're cool.
Yeah. They're neato burrito.
Like, yeah. But, yeah, that is a basic overview of all of the Space Marine legions, their basic vibe, their history, all that good stuff. Now, obviously, there's a lot more you could read about any of them, even the ones that I say that we don't have a lot of lore on them. There's still books that can go in and detail more stuff about that. So, if any of that interests you, I'd say just check in on maybe one of the Horus Heresy books or one of the 40K books about whatever legion interests you.
Yeah.
And you can read up about them. And if you're worried about I won't have read all the other Horus Heresy books, look, there's 65 of those books, and they were not designed to have to be read in a particular order, except within mini trilogies within the Horus Heresy.
Right.
So just if you're oh yeah, I want to know about the Alpha Legion, just grab the Alpha Legion books and read them in the order that they were published in as a group, not caring about the order of the larger Horus Heresy.
Right.
And even if you read the Horus Heresy in the quote unquote intended or publication order, it jumps around the timeline all over the place anyway. So like whatever, just go have fun with it.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. Chesh, do you have any questions, or does the audience have any questions?
There hasn't been a whole lot of questions, lots of comments, but we should probably wrap because we have been live for over 3 hours.
Have we? Well, it was 18 legions.
It was 18 legions. We got through a lot.
Yeah.
So.
All right. Well,
yeah.
In that case, thanks everybody.
Thanks for joining us, everybody.
Remember, this was at least in part in preparation for the upcoming Wrath and Glory campaign that will be after Star Trek. Because while we're not at the halfway point for Star Trek as a whole, or sorry, for Star Trek Endurance, we're actually at close to the halfway point for Star Trek as the whole overarching campaign, including Lexington.
Yes.
So, yeah.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.